Start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes.
Happy New Year to you.
And so we usually start the meeting off with public comments. So any public comments this evening? Being no public comments, on to item number 2 on our agenda. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first set is from December 10th. So I'll make a motion. Move to accept and approve the minutes of December 10th, 2015 as shown. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on the December 10th, 2015 minutes? All those in favor of the motion? That's it. Thank you. The second set of minutes is from December 15th. Move to accept and approve the minutes of December 15th, 2015 as shown. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Egan. Thank you. Any comments on the minutes of 2015? There was one change made.
Yeah.
So
Eagle Eye caught that.
everyone should get the change, okay? Any other comments? All those in favor? Okay. Next, item number 3. Move to accept and approve the list of correspondences as shown as A through O. We have a second.
Second.
Ty goes to the runner. Any comments on that? I have 2, Kevin, on the correspondence. First question is, the community development request for volunteers. Who manages that? Community Development Implementation Committee. Who?
Jack?
Oh, is that the correspondence from Jack McKean? Yeah.
Okay.
Just by way of explanation, that document should have followed my earlier note.
Okay, so you're in reverse order?
Yeah. And the purpose of what you see as Community Development Implementation Committee was nothing more than, if you proceed with my suggestion of a Housing Production Plan Implementation Committee, the Community Development page you were referring to is just a template that you might look at in terms of how to set the responsibilities of
Okay.
that committee.
All right, because, yeah, I was backwards, it doesn't make sense, but now it makes sense. So anyways, we have your letter, Jack, and so that was my second question and my second piece of business about it. I think we'll talk about this later on in like the chairman's notes section. When we get to that in the agenda, I've pulled it out, so we talk to it about it then in a little more detail. But thank you, Jack, for your the information in the letter. I appreciate it. And anybody else have any comments about correspondence items A through O? So all those in favor of accepting the correspondence items A through O? Consent agenda. Reappoint the local license authority agents for the town of Maynard, which is the police department. Move to accept and approve the consent items as shown. We have a second.
Second.
Donovan. Comments on the reappointment of the local licensing authority agents for the town? Are there any? It's an annual event, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. Typically,
What's that?
just they've approved them?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
approving the
Any, so
consent.
there's no comments on the consent agenda? All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda? Consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, item 5. We need to set the place and time for the joint budget meeting, Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and FinCom. The motion is move to set date, time, and place for the joint budget meeting per the Town Charter to Saturday, February 13th, 2016, at 8 a.m. Coffee with meeting to kick off at 8:30 at the Maynard Public Library. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments about the meeting?
Yeah, what's the expectation of the meeting for these three entities to get together? How's it typically, what's the flow gonna be like? What's the expectation on participation? Just, since this would be my first time doing this, I just
Yeah,
wanna.
by the board.
Sure,
It's really an opportunity for the board, school committee, finance committee to really more listen. It's the first time that any of those boards or committees are seeing the proposed budget for the fiscal year. That essentially, the purpose behind it is essentially it's the town administrator's budget up until that joint budget meeting, at which time the budget is then presented to the Board of Selectmen and then becomes the selectmen's budget for continuing discussion. So for the board's responsibility, expectation is really to just kind of listen, ask questions. There's no expectation to present anything. It's primarily myself that does the majority of it, and then the school committee will present their budget request items, that they put forward. But they typically don't know where they are yet either, as far as the budget number. They know what they've asked for, but they don't know what they're getting until that day either. So that's really the intent. We'll do a pretty standard agenda. We're out no later than 12, depending on questions. Last couple of years have gone pretty smoothly.
Okay.
Typically, the moderator moderates, so if we contacted the moderator.
Typically, the moderator, once we set it, we reach out to them. Unfortunately, Jim was ill last year. He didn't moderate, but that's typically what we'll ask Dick to moderate that meeting.
Thank you.
Once
We have
set it.
that, when will we get the information in advance to go through it?
What information? You got that
Agenda
day?
and such.
Get it that day?
Yeah,
So we won't get it in advance?
no.
Can we?
Um,
Like, I don't know, 48 hours, 24 hours, just, so, casual reading?
Sure.
I mean, just so that we can be a little bit more prepared, other than here it is and just kind of look, I'd rather not look odd.
Well, you're really kind of there to just, I mean, we can present it,
Serves as the
but it
presentation.
serves as
Yeah.
a presentation. If you get it, well, there's no context.
Oh, then
to it.
so you're
That's
holding
the-
us hostage. We have to come to get the agenda, is what you're saying.
That's, well, no, it's sort of the official pass of the
Well, it's
torch.
kind of extortionist.
We
Okay,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're not tied to
we
anything.
have
Alright.
2.5 months to digest it
okay,
after that.
all right. So we'll get it the Wednesday the week of, no thanks.
I'm just following the charter.
All right. Okay,
Thank you for that explanation, Gary.
let's,
I might need an extra week to figure out what we're gonna make
all
up.
right, so all those, any comments, we've had the comments, all those in favor of that time? That's kind of a casual day, no need to get suit and ties and everything, so. All right, thank you.
Shorts and flip-flops it is.
We have to have a public hearing in 5 minutes, so can we skip to,
1 minute, actually, 7:10.
No, you're good.
7:10.
You're good right now.
we can go.
what time is that?
7:10.
Oh, 7:10, all right, I thought 7:15, so,
No, we've readjusted those.
all right.
So, you have the legal ones.
I have the legal notice, which I will read. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, as amended, that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, January 5th, 2016, at 7:10 PM in the meeting room number 201 of Maynard Town Building on an application for a transfer of an all-alcohol license from Russell's Convenience Store to J. Salamone Enterprises, Inc., 193 Main Street, Maynard. A copy of the application is on file in the Board of Selectmen's Office / Licensing Division. We'll open that hearing now.
So, Jamie Salamone, and I apologize,
Sarah.
Sarah, are here this evening, again, seeking a transfer from Russell's Convenience Store to J. Salamone Enterprise, Inc. This is a practice, we've actually had them here before the board, which was approved. And there's some items with the ABCC that have gone back and forth and is being represented for board approval this evening. So, turn it over.
Okay. Any questions?
Sure. What's the reason behind transferring? It wasn't clear on the actual application.
My father, he wasn't going to sell me the liquor license, so there was no purchase and sale on the liquor license. And that came up with the ABCC. There needs to be a transaction with a dollar amount, so that was why we had to resubmit and do a dollar amount on a transaction for the liquor license.
Okay, but the transfer itself is taking place because why?
Oh, because I purchased the business from my father.
Ah, okay, so the business, so the ownership is changing of the...
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so,
However, just to clarify, the ownership transfer took place probably a year and a half ago. Right?
Yes,
And
yeah.
Actually, we,
but on paper, that's what was going on, okay.
Yeah.
Just, wasn't clear on the document, so I want to make sure I understand that. All right. So business as usual.
Yes, yeah.
That's the only
Okay.
question I had, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? David?
Nope.
Jason?
no.
Tim?
Nope.
Okay, so, I don't have any questions. I know family business, so I'm okay with that. So the motion is to accept and approve the wine and malt alcohol liquor license from Russell Convenience Store to J. Salamone Enterprises, Inc., 193 Main Street, Maynard. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further comments? Any public comments? This is a public hearing. Okay. Any objections, chief? Get him involved. All right. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming in.
Now we can give it back.
See you tomorrow morning, Jamie.
Okay.
You start early, huh, Dave?
Yep. I make a
You
motion,
stop there on your way to work?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Public hearing is closed. Thank you. Okay.
5 minutes.
That was painless. All right, so now we have the
So
request for a Class 2 dealer's license, which is automobiles, XL Management, XL Auto Sales. Sale or sales?
It's a sale, actually, sales was taken, so we just figured to go.
Okay,
with
so
that sale.
no S. All right,
Yes.
okay, thanks. All right. What do we got going here, Kevin?
Yeah, the application
sit,
for Class 2 dealer's license at the former Enterprise Rent-A-Car location at 76A Powder Mill Road. Looked at, you're looking at selling automobiles, I think, what, around
Related
20?
business.
What was the count you were looking at? 35?
35.
35 vehicles. And, yeah, again, it's a location in town that's suited for this type of business. After the board, if the board approves this, it then requires to go before the planning board at which they have a scheduled hearing already for this particular item, and that would be contingent upon the approval at the planning board level. If you want to add to your proposed plan out there.
Okay.
Is it the planning board's jurisdiction as to the maximum number of vehicles that can be
Yes.
at that spot?
Yes.
And then secondly, I'm not opposed to this issue. Just my question is it backwards to have suppose the planning board rejects it? Why would we vote on something that they then reject?
Yeah, as precedence, we have done it prior to
Yeah,
with the
okay,
contingency. I kind of raised the same concern. The reason we chose to push it forward is because their hearing isn't until, it's scheduled for sometime the end of February, and then push the business operation out before then back to the selectmen at a meeting potentially in March, and in the interest of him looking to operate as soon as he can. But there is precedence that the board has approved it with the contingency.
That's fine. obviously outside of our jurisdiction here, but it seems to me 35 cars is a lot of cars for that particular location, but I'll leave that up to the wisdom of the planning board. I don't know how many cars Enterprise used to have squeezed in there, but that was a tight squeeze.
Well, they had a lot in the back,
There's a
There's
lot in the back?
Yeah.
Okay.
but I can't speak to the numbers.
Yeah,
They-
I didn't realize there was a lot in the back.
But there is definitely a lot in the back, too, yeah. And that would be part of this.
Yeah, I have
Plan.
the demographic actually, and the drawing, if that helps at all, visual, at least this is the actual picture of the area with the actual cars actually lined up. Mayor?
Yeah, sure.
Just something to, that's just, many different layouts can be done, but that's just like,
So this piece of
Simple.
property is the piece of property, it's not the old building that was Midas, which is what somebody said it was the old Midas building. It's the one to the right of Victor,
I don't know, Midas.
just to the right of Victor in the bank, in the auto,
It's
the
right
body
outside
shop.
Wynn's
Yeah.
at the bottom.
Yeah,
Where the meat shop used to be. in-
Exactly, a long time ago, the meat shop and the
Dairy
ice cream place
joint.
was there.
Yeah,
yeah, okay, so all right, someone had said it was the other one, the other piece of property.
Was Midas there before Quinn's? I
There was a
don't know.
Midas shop there a long time ago.
Oh.
It was, and before that, it was Liberty Auto Sales.
Okay.
You're dating yourself now, buddy.
And it was Liberty Auto Sales before he moved
Before
to
that, it
town,
was
but
a
that's a whole different story.
blacksmith.
All right, so,
Do you own this property, or you just?
no, I'm
re- re-
listening.
it was. I know.
I only have one question in regards to this. You have is there a repair facility on site?
There is a separate, basically, business that is right now as a body shop.
No, but, so you don't have any intention to repair vehicles there, just sell them?
No, we actually maybe contracted to him or
Okay.
other businesses local,
Okay,
but
I just
not on the
wasn't,
promise.
just didn't know, okay. Any other questions, Terrence?
Have you operated a business in Maynard before, or?
In Maynard, no.
Yeah, what brought you to Maynard? Just the space itself? Were you looking for that type of facility, or?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I live in Sudbury, so it kind of works out for me. But I've done many small businesses before, but this one in particular, I've done it since I was in school, college, perhaps. And since then, the nature of business has changed since the internet kicked in, and all the sales have changed. But at the same time, it's just proper for the state to have the, requirement for the parking space. So even though we're not gonna basically selling necessarily to Maynard folks, because there's no foot traffic there and stuff, but we still need basically a proper parking space where we can park the cars and have the license, and then majority of sales perhaps will have to happen from the internet.
So some of your sales will be, e-commerce-based sales?
Very much,
Yeah,
most
okay.
of it. Most
But
of it.
you'll have a shop set up for people to walk in as well, or?
Well, it
will be
will be
some-
obviously, the same location will be open to.
I didn't know if we're just, if you're setting up as a storage space versus actual.
No, this will be the actual, business operation base, but at the same time, we're not looking into because in the past, you would get more people walking.
Sure.
But there's literally, I would say, almost every single buyer now goes on the internet, does their shopping, figures out what they want, and then they call, and then there's really no foot traffic to the actual location. So for us, it doesn't really matter if it was a retail or, warehouse, but the fact of the matter is, because it's a zoned auto and related businesses, so it kind of works out for us. And obviously, the place has been vacant for like a year now, so basically, the old lady likes to have it rented, so we figure it works out for us.
That's good. I'm just curious as to why you chose Maynard and stuff, and so it's nice.
No, I live right next town, which is like 10 minutes drive, and local,
Okay.
basically.
Well, welcome. Welcome to
Thank you,
Maynard.
thank you, guys.
All right, Tim, any questions? No. David, Jason?
I'm good.
Okay, so, the motion is move to accept and approve a new business, XL Management, doing business as XL Auto Sale at 76A Powder Mill Road, contingent on the zoning approval hearing with the planning board on January 26, 2016. The second.
Second.
Which one? Who are you giving it to, Chris?
Jason.
Thank you.
Any further comments, anybody? All right, all those in favor of accepting the motion? There you go. You're good.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Saeed. We'll see you probably on the 27th.
I'll be around.
Okay, thanks. Chief?
You know he means business when he's in his suit.
He went to school today.
I had a great class today, actually.
Okay.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, what are we, you or Chief? gonna
Yeah,
say
just
something?
let the chief go into it and can provide additional comments.
I guess the reason why I'm here is asking for 2 appointments to the police department. I'll give you the whole backstory and how we got here, and it's not going to be tonight. I just wanted to explain everything and answer any questions, and then, you know, obviously, whatever you decide. Ultimately, it's on November 23rd, the governor signed the home rule petition to remove us from civil service, which was in a holding pattern for quite some time. So I was very, very thankful that that got resolved. And then because of the holidays, I didn't come before you in December, so this is the first opportunity. So the background is there was an appeal. There was an appeal from a bypass from civil service in 2014, and that was an applicant who appealed and ultimately requested civil service to do an investigation, which is a process that they do to determine if we were in or out of civil service. And they make their own determination whether we are or we aren't. And that took quite some time, and their decision essentially said you have until March of 2016 to prove that you're out. And it basically had to do with where we were in the process of the home rule petition. So they kind of put us in a very unique position because, you know, we were essentially out of civil service, so we couldn't use their process, and we didn't really want to. And we couldn't hire anybody because we were waiting for the governor to sign this. So we were in this kind of holding pattern for probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months at least. So that was where we were, say, July, August, September timeframe. In July, I had an officer who went out with a pretty serious medical condition. He ultimately came back to work in October, but when all this took place, it was very unclear if he was going to return to work or not. So that was one opening. Another officer accepted a position with the state police and resigned. That was in August timeframe when I figured that out, first week in September. And Officer McHugh came in and decided to retire. And that was in the same week. So the last week in August, the first week in September, we had 3 openings, which is a pretty big gap for us as far as it's basically essentially one shift completely, either the midnight shift or the day shift. It's everybody. So, you know, so I feel like one of my primary responsibilities is the staffing and to make sure that we're fully staffed. And anytime there's, openings, we got to address them immediately. So that's where I was in August. And I looked at this as an internal promotion process with candidates that we had in dispatch. It was essentially looking at it as I couldn't hire anybody, but we could put them in training into the police academy. So we had some very qualified dispatchers that were vetted for well over a year that were, and I'll give you their backgrounds. They're just excellent. Both of them are excellent employees. And I discussed it with Kevin. I actually, the first week in September, I ran it by Selectman Egan. So we sat down and discussed it, and I offered them the opportunity to go to the police academy to fill these vacancies. 2 of I thought possibly 3, but at least 2. And part of that is the process to get somebody into a police academy is extremely difficult, or it's just very time-consuming. And the timing of this was actually perfect for the situation we were in, because they have to take what's called the physical abilities test before they're allowed to go to the police academy. And the deadline for that was the second week in September. So I basically discussed it with, the timeline worked out for the two employees. They went and took the test. If they didn't pass the test, that was going to be the end of it. But they passed, obviously. And the police academy started in the middle of October. That was the last one until February. So we would have been probably 6 months before we could even consider hiring somebody, and then it's another 6 months for the police academy, plus about 2 or 3 months of training time. So it would have been probably this time next year before we could have had those positions filled. So it was kind of good timing, excellent candidates, so we worked it out where they could attend the police academy. And to kind of give you an idea of the quality of the people that we have, they agreed to basically work their shifts when they weren't at the police academy. So they were working on the weekends until we could replace them because of the dispatching shortage that we had. So they were great with that. So it didn't impact the police department too much, or obviously the fire department, because that was a big consideration with them. So in October, they started the police academy. They graduate in March. And they're probably the ideal candidates, I think, for the police department through the command staff. Everybody was 100% behind this process and going forward with them and giving them the opportunity. So that's basically where we're at with them. But the two people that I'm talking about, one is Trista Mancuso. She lives in town. She owns a house in town. She has 2 children. They both go to school, obviously, in Maynard. She grew up she went to Lexington to Minuteman Regional. She has not an associate. She was an EMT. He has nursing credits from college. She was hired as a dispatcher in August of 2014. She was one of the original dispatchers that we hired. She attended the Dispatcher Academy in November. Then she went to put herself through the Reserve Police Academy, which is 300 hours last year. So she went 3 days a week to the Police Academy part-time in Boylston while she was working here as a dispatcher. And she's a special officer already, too. She was appointed in June of 2015. And her sister's a Concord police officer, and her grandfather's a retired Concord police officer. So she knows totally what she's getting into, and she worked she works basically all the town functions that we've had. Just a great asset to the police department, totally. And everybody's very supportive of her getting appointed to the full-time position. The other candidate is Patrick Brennan. He's lives in Maynard, went through Maynard schools, graduated in 2008 from Maynard schools. Got hired in July as a dispatcher, as one of the original dispatchers for us. And before that, he actually worked for the school department in town. Has about 3 years' worth of credits from UMass for criminal justice. He also, along with Trista, both went to the part-time police academy. They went together. So they were working crazy hours, working for us and then attending the police academy on their own time. And he's also a special police officer that we appointed in last June. So, I don't think we, quite honestly, wouldn't find any better candidates if we tried. They've proven hard-working, great ethic, get along. Everybody, really gets along with them. They work really hard. Great decision-making skills. All the qualities you'd look for in a police officer. Both of them have it. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me to give them this opportunity. So that's where we're at. And we still have 2 openings that we need to fill, so they're currently in the police academy, and just I'm going to ask that you appoint them contingent upon their graduation of the police academy, which will be in March, and then they would start field training and just fill those gaps. So I don't know if you have any questions, but like I said, this all happened first week in September. I met with Selectman Egan on, it's like the first week in September, I think, sometime, Tim. I have like the September 4th or so, and explained all this to him, where we were and the process that we used to get them into the police academy, and also Kevin too. So If
Are
you have
you
any questions.
going to ask us to do this tonight?
No,
Okay.
no. I just wanted to lay it, lay out what transpired, in case you had any questions, and so you know where we're at. They can be appointed, I guess, really, honestly, anytime, with a formal swearing in, and so when they graduate, it doesn't have to be before you at this point. But there's the two openings that, now that the governor signed the civil service, we're officially completely out, so we don't have to go through that process, and it was kind of that unknown period waiting for it to happen. So if we didn't act on anything, if nothing happened, there was really no end in sight with this. I didn't know when it was going to take place, when the legislature was going to move on this. So this was probably the best course of action to take at the time, and two great candidates. So,
In the third officer, he came back.
yeah, somebody was on a medical, but yeah, he's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have two official openings on the force right now, is what we're saying?
Yeah, an officer resigned for the state police,
So I know, yeah.
and Mary retired.
Yeah, so
So we're too short. So, yeah,
It do result in budget impacts as well. You mentioned staffing, which is, obvious concern, but they also do have budget implications the longer we keep those positions open, since, the mandatory fill, and, you got to backfill those as police officers. So that's always the concern when we talk about long-term illness or injuries that are out, and, a sergeant, could cost us over $500 a day, just in backfill stuff. So that was taken into consideration as well.
right.
Are you done with your questions, Terrence? Do you have more?
No, yeah, I was just going to ask on top of that, we had anybody else that's actually applied or shown interest besides these two that are already in the,
We did it internally, and the reason was, we couldn't hire anybody.
that's fine. I just wanted to-
So there was other interest internally, and there's other very good candidates, but these, through the command staff that we elected, chose. So it wasn't just my decision, it was, it was several people involved in it.
Do we anticipate on the horizon any other openings? Do we have people
Yes.
planning retirement and,
I do.
okay.
And that would follow the formal hiring process that we've laid out. And,
Right.
That's been presented prior.
It's a lot, it'll be far easier now that we're out of civil service. The issue really, for about 6 months, was we were in, like I said, like no man's land.
Sure.
Couldn't really use the civil service process, but we couldn't go out and hire somebody. So this was the internal mechanism to train them, to set us up for, really to fill these positions as soon as possible. And honestly, the key was that we have very good candidates that live in town, work for the town. People know them, they grew up, Patrick grew up in town. Trista owns a house here. I mean, it's just exactly what I think we were looking for, or what we would look for. And they've been great employees, and they're already employed in the police department. So it was kind of a no-brainer with these two, definitely.
No, what's that, Dave?
You're all done? For one point Kevin touched upon, my recollection is that we did sort of establish a process that we're going to follow. I assume going forward, we'll follow that process.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this was definitely a unique situation. That policy for hiring was also one when we were going through union negotiations with the police themselves. Obviously, we were looking for their support to come out of civil service, and they wanted to be part of what that hiring process would look like. And it very much replicates, similar to what the fire department does with exams, et cetera. The difference is the board would be the ultimate appointing authority.
Yeah, so this
yeah.
is sort of an aberration from what we'll see in the future with the whatever future.
I anticipate, the next opening we have, we can do two things. We can do a similar internal process where ideally, I think if we have candidates that are qualified and that are capable, I would prefer to hire them from within. It's a much smoother transition, and it's a proven...
Good for morale, too, I would assume.
It's excellent for that, and it's a proven entity that there's no guesswork, and there is somewhat of a chance when you interview somebody that they do very well on an interview or very bad, and you lose out on a good candidate.
We've had a year to see how they perform under stress with the department, with the officers that are already there on a daily basis, with fire captains that come in and deal with dispatch with the fire chief. I mean, that, very rarely would you have that as an opportunity. That's why, to some degree, it's somewhat of a nice training ground, but it's also, in the back end, it affects the dispatch, but at least we know what you're getting for candidates, so it's kind of nice.
My next question actually is budgetary related. Who paid the academy fees, or who will pay the academy fees? They pay them themselves, or will the town be picking up that?
It's, we paid it, it's $3,000 a person, which is in the training budget. But because they didn't get promoted, they're still getting dispatcher pay. They're basically in training. So it's kind of it was kind of honestly, it was an agreement that we made that they would go to the training under the dispatcher position. So it basically kind of offset.
They're not getting paid step one patrolman
Patrolman
rate.
pay.
They're getting paid less at a dispatcher rate.
I know that in the past, we've had candidates who've paid their own way, and I think most of them have paid their own way, if I'm not mistaken. But,
Prior to me arriving, yes.
yeah.
I've paid for them since I've been.
That's
since
because we've
people
always
have been.
taken lateral transfers under civil service. So the last few prior to that was all under the civil service hiring process, and they were all lateral transfers. So they were all academy trained from another department in some cases. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of them were already academy trained because they were laterals.
Yeah. So I guess that has to be somewhat factored into our budget
Right.
going forward, because if we're going to take a different approach relative to training and...
We've talked about that. We've actually have taken that into consideration, because even with the promotional process, as you remember we did with the sergeants and lieutenants, there's an assessment cost that we were paying that never existed before. So we've discussed that and have factored that into the training, because prior to, it would be the same. They would take the civil service promotional exam for a sergeant or lieutenant and go through that process. Now, it was an exam and assessment center by a third-party assessor, which had a cost, and we've had to factor that in for the promotional piece as well.
There you go, Chris. There's a little bit of preview to the budget meeting. I can ask why the training budget went up by... The next question I have is, can you discuss just a little bit, Chief, about, you mentioned how, the leadership has observed the people in the dispatch and whatever. Can you talk a little bit about, you've now been with the dispatch for about a year and a half, 2 years or whatever, about the relationship and how that works, and how the dynamics between the officers and dispatch and yourself and dispatch and the leadership team and dispatch, and also whether or not the firefighters get an opportunity to come in and interact with dispatch.
I mean, the best thing we did was hire a supervisor to start off. Ann Camaro's just outstanding, and I think it's gone extremely smooth, and I think it's been very successful because of her and the hard work that she puts in and her skills with that. She's a great liaison between both departments. She spends, more time with the police, obviously, but that's because her office is in the police station. There's quite a bit of time that she spends with firefighters. They come in, or she goes to the fire department, and with Chief Stowers quite a bit. The relationship's great. I think it was a very smooth transition for the police department. I don't want to speak for fire. I mean, we had the benefit of having them in the building, which is definitely an advantage. And also, we had about less than a year, but more than 6 months to a year of just them alone doing police work, the police dispatch part of it, which I think ultimately made the transition smoother, because they learned one aspect of it first versus both at the same time. So they got very proficient with the police side of it, and then they transitioned over to the fire side. We talk about it less now, maybe more so, 6 months ago. Everybody's very happy with it. It's what it's done is given us an extra body on the street.
Right.
Which has been a huge impact for us. Gives us more people to go out and do calls. And I think dispatch, that's their expertise. Prior, the officers would rotate every couple of hours. So they would park a car, they would transition cars, you'd have a different person on the desk several times throughout the night. So you get some advantage to having a police officer on the desk, but I think the bigger advantage is the specialty that's their function.
And how many dispatchers do you have on at one given time?
One sitting on the desk, and then when Ann, it works Monday through Friday, so 2 during the day. I mean, she goes in there as needed, does a lot of administrative stuff, obviously, so. But I think it's been a big success. I mean, in my perspective, I can't
That's
speak for the
good to
fire
hear.
department. I
Happy
hope they
about
think the
that.
same. Yeah, it's been
And
good.
lastly, Mike, is more of a comment than anything else. I'm happy to see that the 2 people that were chosen were Maynard residents, and I think that adds to, some of the comments I do hear is that people have said, geez, the police department has changed a little bit. It used
Right.
to be a lot more community-based. And
Yeah.
no discredit or aspersions against the staff that's there, because I think every time I run into them, I think they're doing a great job. But I think it's helpful for the community and helpful for individuals to see that there is opportunity within the Maynard Police Department.
I agree, and this has been a conversation that myself and Chief Stowers have had several times, and Ann, because she's impacted by this, because best-case scenario, in my opinion, is we hire them as dispatchers, and the ones that are interested and prove themselves get hired as police officers, or, in my experience, is an equal amount that go to the fire department, because they get exposure to public safety, and that's their interest. So you have a great tool to vet them, to see their work ethic, their capabilities, all those kind of intangibles that you can't pick up on during an interview. So that process works really well, and I think obviously it's a huge advantage to people from town. They know the community, people know them. The learning curve is very small. Same with the dispatching. I mean, field training for us is going to be cut in half, just because they already know all the inside stuff. Now they just have to learn the community stuff, showing up on calls and how that plays out. But it's a huge advantage to come up through the ranks, and that's the perfect model, I think, for us, when it works.
Yeah,
In this case, it does.
great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Jason, any questions?
Yeah. Real quick for Kevin, just as a reminder, once the governor signed our home rule petition exit from civil service, it then applied retroactive back to town meeting? Or
Depends.
what's officially the date?
Depends who
that
you
we-
ask the interpretation of that being.
Okay.
Some say yes, including some council, Labor Council, others that disagree. I think, the chief and I have talked and looked at it, I mean, it's a little gray, to be honest with you. But
And that's why
with
we
that
waited
being
so
said,
high.
they're honoring the promotions and all that, I mean, there's no issue there. But I don't think it's as clear as yes or no.
And yes, that is why we waited. I didn't want to put somebody in a situation where there was going to be potential litigation or somebody complaining
Right,
about that kind of gray area of hiring somebody before that was finalized.
Yeah.
So,
That
factored
became
in.
effective, and notice was given right away to civil service. And so they've been notified, they've removed the town of Maynard from their distribution, and, the town is out.
Yeah, I forwarded Kevin the email, but the civil service rep sent me something yesterday, and I replied back. I was in a group list, and I replied back and asked her if she had received notice about the governor's, and she wrote, yes, sorry, I meant to take you off our list. So, as far as civil service is concerned, it's over.
2 new officers, same time? Does that put any strains on training or your existing staff doing that training?
No, we have field training officers that have to be certified, and we do. I wouldn't want to do more than 2, just because you'd have to have more people certified as field training officers, but, and like I said, in this situation, it's going to be a very short period. It shouldn't take very long at all.
I think that's it.
Anybody else, any questions?
Yeah, thank you for being proactive and getting a plan in place. We certainly would be in a bind if we didn't have a plan ahead of time. And fully back this idea. I don't think you could find 2 better candidates. They're internal. It's what we like to see. I know growing up I saw all the cops are from here, and hopefully we can start that trend again. Dispatching, does that mean we will be having openings soon?
We do. And in the same regard, Ann's very proactive in that. We replaced 1 already, just because the impact, there's 4 dispatches, so when we took 2 out, we changed things around and ended up working the desk, so she handled it. We replaced 1, we still have 1 opening. She has somebody coming in next week, so. And then there's per diems also, there's 1 part-time position that is open. But she does a great job managing that, can stay away from that completely. Keeps her busy. I have enough, I don't want to get involved in that too much.
Yeah, I would just echo that, since it's a little outside of the discussion, but Ann has been a tremendous addition to, the town and what she's done there. The chief said, we hired her, but we hired her initially to kind of build what it would look like. So the intent was to bring her in as a supervisor without hiring any dispatchers. And that's what she's done, and she's just been a valuable asset, and has done far more than, we've asked her to manage other things when it comes to helping out with, the door controls when we had the facilities manager lapse when Greg Lefter had resigned and we had nobody, so she was managing that, and just phone system, she's taken over as the communication supervisor, so that we're in good shape there. And I agree, I can't say enough, she's doing an excellent job and has been a terrific hire for the town.
Yeah.
So it's one area I don't worry about.
No, I agree.
Okay. Terrence?
No, thanks.
So I guess just as a next step, we would look to set a meeting to do a formal appointment.
We can either,
Or do we?
based on what you think, is either the appointment with them before you, or we can wait, if you choose to appoint them, to do a swearing in when they graduate the police academy, but appoint them, I guess, prior to that.
We could do
I
both,
don't know
right?
I think, yeah, we could do the appointments. We could have them in and do the
Have 'em
appointments.
the
and
next
then
meeting.
We could do a more formal thing like we do with the firefighters, with their family and
Right,
everyone here.
Right.
We could do that. We could do it as a thing before our meeting.
Is there a budgetary issue regarding, if we appoint them prior, are they paid at a different scale because they're now full-time police officer versus a dispatch person?
Yes, I would, yeah, they would go to the patrolman rate.
So if that's the case, and this is purely budgetary, but it makes more sense to me to wait.
Well, what's your, to that point, I understand what Dave's saying, but what's your plan to handle that? I'm assuming you guys have talked about how that would affect the budget and.
The budget can cover it.
Well,
You're filling shifts with overtime now, I assume.
so go back to what you were
Actually
saying,
save us
when you were
money.
saying backfill, what does that mean? You said backfill, like, does that mean?
Well, that's backfill because of the vacancies that exist. So
This won't affect that.
no.
No, so what happens is, on some shifts, we don't fill, so they run less than what we would staff normally, say, on the day shift. With Officer McHugh, who worked the day shift, I have the ability to kind of juggle people around, some of the detectives, Officer
Yourself.
Nyholm. So I don't have to
yourself
fill
and the
all
lieutenant
the,
are here
yeah.
during the day, so.
So we can kind of manipulate it when people are out to a certain degree, because training takes place during the day too. So I can absorb some of it, and it offsets. I can absorb it in the budget for the, temporarily, not, I wouldn't do it for the whole year.
Okay, so to follow up on that, what, I'm not opposed to appointing them, earlier than the graduation, contingent upon that, but what's is there any sort of other benefit to the town to have them appointed earlier as opposed to later, other than that just eases the transition in March, or?
Yes.
And I don't know, are they able to go out and do certain things once they're appointed that they can't do before, that, are we?
No, it's probably more so than anything a peace of mind that they know that they are filling those positions, because right now they don't know that. So it's not certain, obviously. They're in training, but they're essentially dispatchers. So to appoint them, to solidify their appointments and that they're filling that position, then they spend the next basically 8 weeks in the police academy, get out and immediately go into field training.
So if
That's
a
about
vote
it.
were to be taken
Mhm.
to appoint them contingent upon their graduation,
Mhm.
they then have the guarantee that they have, assuming that they've graduated, they have the guarantee that you say that they would be looking for.
Yes.
And from a fiscal standpoint,
Mhm.
which, I don't want to be cold about it, I want the people to be successful.
Mhm.
But from a fiscal standpoint, a budgetary standpoint, even though, Kevin says, yeah, the money's in the budget, we can cover it. Well, just because the money's in the budget doesn't mean we should spend it. And that's the point, is that we may not need to spend it if we have other ways to, and my responsibility to the community is to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible. And my sense is that it's more fiscally responsible to, if it's peace of mind, we can appoint them contingent upon graduation, with the understanding that they don't get paid that rate, and the town doesn't expend those monies. And again, to Kevin's point, we're not spending any more money on the overtime side, because we have to fill that anyway until they can be on the street.
Yes, and I guess I don't want to get into a,
I just feel, from my perspective, it's the right thing to do. We hire anybody who's not academy trained, they're getting paid at that step one patrolman rate. And if we're going to make the decision that we're going to appoint them, I think, I'd say the money's there, because I think it shows some, on the town side.
it's not a it's not a
big
significant
price
difference between what they're getting and what first step patrolman makes. And the one concern I have, or the one issue is that there was a case maybe 6 months ago where the practice that was even done here, where they would just arbitrarily choose a number to pay somebody a salary while they were in the police academy. And I know there's some officers here that were given just, I don't know what the number was.
A made-up
Say,
number.
Yeah, it was like, say, $500 a week versus whatever the actual salary was. There was a case decision where they had to pay retroactive that amount because they were police officers and they weren't getting paid whatever the first step was. So
Okay,
it just for the minimal difference in the salary, I agree with Kevin. I just think it's probably the right thing to do for that.
so let's just, God bless you. Let's schedule it to go for when, the next time we meet, and do the appointments. But let's do it with the information in hand. Can we get the numbers and the difference between, weigh it out? This is when they expect to get out of the academy. Here's what they are today, and here's what the dollar difference is, to David's point. So we're at least making a decision based on some fiscal.
So we can do that before
reasonable-
we set, we don't want to do that with them here.
No, yeah.
No, but we can do that through, email or whatever. We can,
Oh, okay.
we can handle that, we
Yeah.
can handle that, openly through that, that avenue.
We don't want to have the discussion, well, no.
No, we don't want to have the.
Distributed, that information
We don't-
can be distributed via email.
I mean, if you look at it from a different perspective, if we didn't put them in the police academy, the overtime costs over the next year with those openings would be substantial. And the difference between what they would get,
I don't know what the difference is.
from the next meeting, which was January 18th or so, till they graduate in March 15th, is about 8 weeks. So the impact, if we didn't fill those positions would have been pretty substantial. And if we did just appoint somebody and send them to the police academy, you would be paying them that full amount the entire time. This one's only going to be about a third of the length of the police academy. So there's been a substantial savings.
So typically, if we make a decision to hire somebody, and we send them to the police academy as part of being certified to be a police officer, we're paying them from the moment that we actually extend them the offer?
Well, from when they start the police
they start
academy.
the academy.
They start
We're-
employment.
We're required by law to pay them that
Okay.
step one patrolman rate.
All right, so it's not out of the there's no, we're not breaking precedent by doing this, is what I'm hearing, right? So
Well,
this would be a normal way that you
It
would
would be the normal way to do it. I mean, the negotiation I made with,
That's the difference, is that we've never had that situation.
right,
The difference
I agree.
So if we hire someone off the street,
Mhm.
and we appoint them to the academy,
Mhm.
paying for the academy,
Yes,
and we're paying them at the higher rate
yes,
for the full term.
yes.
So we have two people that are actually performing a service to the town today. We're paying for the academy, and all we're gonna look to do is appoint them which is the normal course of action.
Mhm.
And just, so we're not
Pay them
really,
the-
we're not really expending any money that we wouldn't have otherwise expended. We're actually saving money in putting these two people in the academy and running them through.
I think we saved a substantial amount of money by putting them in the position they're in right now. And the agreement that I had with them staying in the dispatcher role, and they actually worked like Saturday and Sundays while they were Monday through Friday at the police academy for about 8 or 9 of the weeks. So they saved us a significant amount because of the rotation of the schedule and everything, how we worked it with them. They've been, I think, very accommodating with our needs at the police department, anticipating, ultimately getting appointed. So,
So it's not a reward, it's a commonplace, this is typically how you do this?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
absolutely. I mean, the
The last
last,
3 officers we hired, with the exception of the very last one, what's his name, Tom?
yeah, TJ was already
TJ, yeah.
academy
Other than
trained.
him, the 3 prior to him all went to the academy. We paid them
First step.
first step patrolman and
And-
pay for the academy.
Gotcha.
That's a different light.
It's a very, very expensive process because of the time commitment.
And the big
Within-
difference too,
in the-
just from
in the
the
delay.
police difference and the fire difference is, the firefighter can be on the job a year before they even got to recruit training. The police, they don't work until they've gone to the academy, and then there's some amount of time, then the chief determines they're ready, that they come off of sort of field training. But the firefighters, he could hire them today, they could start tomorrow pending they pass physicals and stuff, and it could be 6-8 months before they're in the academy or longer.
Yeah, in the,
Quick question, so this is somewhat related, but I know we just lost a very good officer who, actually, when he responded to a call I was involved with, he was in field training, and he's already gone on to another career in law enforcement for another
for state police.
state police, right? So we bring these two on, just any two, not just these two, but we bring
Yeah.
some people on. What's their commitment to staying with the town?
There is no contractual. I think it's more of professional police department, quality work environment, in our commitment to them and wanting them to stay here. There's no contractual obligation on their part. I mean,
What's your experience with, since you've been here, how, do we have great retention?
We've had one that left, and that was for state police.
went for the
which
state police.
would say,
I can understand why he left, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
bigger opportunity.
Part of it, honestly, is getting out of civil service because the opportunity to lateral transfer is limited. And civil service attracts people that just want to get a job. So they'll take anything versus now they want to come here. Like the 2 people in the police academy right now, they want to be here. They committed to being dispatchers here as an opportunity to get into the police department. That's kind of the difference, I think. And I see them as long-term career employees. I don't see them wanting to go anywhere, and I'm hoping they don't, but I don't see that, I obviously can't predict it, but.
I figured I'd ask the
Yeah.
question,
That's a good point, though. I mean, I think the civil service piece takes a huge factor of that out, because we've had, over the years, a lot that have lateraled, you know, a few have lateraled over to Cambridge, you know, bigger departments, city of Cambridge. A few have lateraled over to Waltham, you know, for other opportunities, but they were much easier, you know, civil service openings that they could lateral into versus a non-civil service hire practice. So that probably would eliminate some fraction of that.
Okay.
And if it's a desirable place to work and attractive department, which I think, you know, I think it is.
Hiring through civil service concerned me, because we weren't getting town residents. So you get people, you know, honestly, Officer Latino, great guy, he did a phenomenal job, you know, very well liked, but he grew up in Oxford. So the concern I always had was that he was going to go back to where, you know, the community he grew up in. He ended up going to the state police. And that was because once you exhaust the resident list in civil service, it opens it up to statewide. And actually, the resident list is the veterans, and then that whole plays into it. So you're not drawing on just the community. In smaller communities, it's the problem all of them have. It's not just unique to Maynard. So I think that eliminates a lot of those concerns, because you have people coming here that want to be here.
Patrick was going to escape. He would have escaped a long time ago. He's not going anywhere.
No.
But, okay. Anybody else have any questions for the chief? Any more questions?
No.
I guess we can schedule it and we'll vote.
Next meeting.
Next meeting, and
Okay.
see what the vote is when the time comes. Thank you.
All set, thank you.
Thanks, chief.
For all the information. All right, Kevin, want to do number 9 for us?
Yeah, just want to run through with the board the plan for town meeting as far as assignments at special town meeting. I sent out sort of the assignment list. Becky went back through the minutes and said that one of them was different. I don't recall that was the case, but I think, you know, however it played out. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page with which articles they're moving and presenting, and also let you know about a couple of small changes. So if we start with Article S1, to rescind unused borrowing authority for the high school, have that as Selectman De Silva moving and presenting that article. S2, with amending the town bylaws, heading and bylaw table, have that as Selectman Creel moving the article, but Bill Coleman, who's the chairman of the bylaw committee, wants to present the article itself. So he has prepared, I think, 3 slides that he would like to use. So, Jason, for that particular article, it would literally just be motioning and then turning
over to Bill.
Turning over to Bill Coleman.
Okay.
So, not a whole lot of, that has changed. I didn't realize that, you know, Bill was, it's pretty straightforward, but he wants to do it. Article 3, the transfer of the Fowler School to the Board of Selectmen. I have Selectman Gavin presenting S3. S4, the PEG access amendment, I have now as Selectman Creel. I think originally, I thought it was Terrence.
We didn't stick you with 2 things, but somehow someone
So if you
mumbled
wanna-
maybe on the minutes or something, I don't know.
No, you gave me one and you just took it away. That's it. I'm phoning
Yeah,
it in.
configured. So, PEG access is listed as Selectman Creel. And that's a pretty straightforward article as well. S5, the fire capital outlay, I have as Selectman Egan presenting that one, as is the case with Article 6, the CPC. This one is the one that it's gonna be a change in the motion. All of the other motions up to this point are the standard move to accept the article as printed in the warrant, except the words to do or act thereon. The CPC article has a couple of changes that will be made within the amendment. There's 2, one of the sections is going to be deleted completely. One of those first numbers, which I'll get you all that. And then there's a language change that references returning funds back to a particular account, but it's a transcription error. That's not the correct one. So town council's working on those amendments to be made within the motion itself. So you would literally just read the motion, and that would take care of the amendments. And then you would present the article itself.
And there may be a question that comes as a result of that change as to what the implications are. And
Yeah. One of them is literally straightforward. It's removing it completely because it already happened. It was already closed out. And the other one was just a correction on where it came from. But the other one is also going to be different, is Article 7 with Selectman De Silva moving that one. And that motion is going to have a couple of those items that we noted already, Chris, which you're aware of. That motion is being drafted by council to
which
address.
article is that? What's the title of it?
That's the NBOD, the bylaw,
Got it.
for amendment to the NBOD. And that was the one that, if you remember, that it had to do with the numbering. When it got transcribed into the warrant, it had a built-in number character. So
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
it,
yep.
instead of it starting at 1, like
Yep.
4-1, it started at 4-4. And so that'll all get addressed within. There's none of these changes are substantive changes.
Okay,
They're-
that's
they're
strictly a clerical issue.
Yeah. They're transcription errors. that are-
They're also going to include at town meeting the planning board's recommendation and the stricken version of the.
Yeah,
zoning.
so, like we've provided with S9, the stricken version of what's changed, the context of what's changed, John and Lisa are of, there's no requirement to have it there, to provide it. Lisa recommends that we do have it there so that it can be clearly seen. John felt it definitely didn't need to be printed in the warrant because it was a significant change comparatively, than it wasn't just a couple of paragraph items. But we've discussed it tonight, and we're going to provide a handout copy with the warrants of the full stricken language of the full.
Stricken language of the NBOD.
The entire NBOD.
Yeah.
With that, this is also the only article that the Finance Committee did not vote to recommend on prior to the printing. So this is the only one that's noted in the warrant as Finance Committee recommendation is at town meeting. So they need to provide a written recommendation, and it will be provided within the same document handout. It'll be before that with their recommendation, which is to recommend, and their comment. That's the only one of the 9 that didn't get printed within the warrant. So those handouts will be in addition. Ask the Finance Committee for the recommendation, and because it's a zoning article, they also will ask the Planning Board. Chris will present his introduction and then turn it over to John Whitten, who will present on the specific zoning changes, and then leave it to that. Both S7 and S9, the developers are not planned to present anything, but are there. They each have a representative that is there to speak to specific questions and answers, of which either, in this case, either Chris or John will ask the moderator to recognize Bob DiPietri. But there's no presentation of anything from the developer. Anything else on that one, Chris?
No, that was it.
Yeah.
If there's questions, he'll answer them. And John Whitten will have, I think he said 4 or 5 slides of bullet.
It'll be minimal. The
Changes.
feeling with everybody was, kind of less is more, and that, to keep this focused on the zoning changes and, not, it's not the time to really show the concept type of slides. Like, we've done the preliminary meetings, they've had open houses sessions, and that's all been shared, but for this particular presentation, the intent is to focus on the, where we are, how we got here, and the actual changes, so. S8, Article 8 is the certified free cash appropriation. Selectman Gavin, I have you as moving and presenting that article. And then the last article is Article 9, the proposed amendment to the healthcare industrial. I have Selectman Donovan moving the article, and Bernie Cahill presenting the article. So Terrence will move it, and then Bernie will present. He has 3 or 4 slides as this is a sponsored planning board article that he will present and speak to. He will then also, so you're both aware, he'll both be up there. If there's questions that either of the two of you want to defer, Henry St. Hilaire will be the Saracen representative that if the developer needs, we'd have to ask the moderator to recognize Henry and ask him to answer the questions. So both Henry and Bob will be in the guest section, and they can answer from the microphone there, or come up. But there's no, it's just a straightforward motion for that one. Anything else?
Will you be available sometime later this week just to review the free cash, basically?
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
And have there been any preparation of slides for that? For any of these, other than, I know.
It's on the plate for tomorrow to do. We've done some prep. It's not within a master of anything. We
Okay.
put some context to it, but hopefully, by Thursday they'll be done.
All right.
Start them tomorrow, but yeah, if you want to talk about the specifics
Yeah,
of it.
there's a meeting
for-
Thursday night, or even I can talk separately, but there's a meeting Thursday night for the planning board.
For the
So,
veterans thing.
Yeah, maybe if I can
Yeah.
come in before that. It'll only take 10 minutes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I think slides will be at a minimum.
Yeah, I know, for most of
I'm
these,
not anticipating any from
most of the ones,
this meeting.
if anything, it's like one slide with some of the bullets as to why we're doing it, beyond the motion slide. But I think, at least for 7 out, of the articles, they're pretty much housekeeping articles. There isn't much to add, but, yeah, that sounds good, David. Thursday.
Okay.
Anything else? They are, the moderator and the town clerk have asked for an overflow room to be set up. Knowing how many. And they also have, I think, 1,000 warrants printed. Not our call, but seemed excessive, but they're ready for it if they show. That's it. Anything to add to that?
It's about 1,450.
Yeah.
A lot of books.
A lot of books, a lot of trees.
All right, so, item 10.
Item 10, yes, I sent an email to the board just to kind of provide some background ahead of time as to the intent of this agenda item. Just before the New Year's break, I heard from Mike Carr, the Chief of Staff for Senator Eldridge, that Senate Council had reached out to him requesting the specific changes to transfer, language that says that of transferring a license granted pursuant to granted to a new applicant, et cetera, some of the language specifically in this that they want to see included, of which you have a copy of the motion that's being proposed by Senator Eldridge to identify it. It's just a kind of a cleanup that they want to have within the language of the bill, and it's similar to what we did with the prior one. So there's this piece, and then there's a side comment, which I don't recommend we do anything with, but the Senate is now saying that they disagree with the House on a requirement that the 3-year provision that we already voted to approve be in there. And I had the conversation with Mike about it, and he's asking if the board is okay with leaving it in there, which is fine if we do, and we already voted on it. But I want the board to be aware that the Senate is now saying that the House is requiring it, and they've been requiring it of all moving forward, but the Senate isn't of the same agreement. So one of the issues is if we say, okay, they can remove it out, the Senate can remove that out, the piece that was added in, but if the House decided to dig their heels in, it could then have to go back, and it could be a back and forth between the two of them, and I don't know that they were really losing too much by having it in there. But he did want me to make sure I shared that with the board, that it isn't absolute requirement from their view that it be in there. But there is that concern of it being that much more delayed.
If I remember correctly, one of the concerns we had too, as we discussed it, was, and I think we sent it off to council, was the whole discussion relative to the permitting of a location.
Yeah.
And whether it, what location actually meant, et cetera. Probably, nobody knows, because the Senate
And I
differs
think-
from the House.
Right. I think that's a lot of the concern with the Senate has. They disagree with the language that the House has been changing and putting that in there. But, you know, there's no harm if it stays in there ultimately. I mean, so it takes a little bit of flexibility of what we were able to do with those additional licenses, but I don't know that we, at this stage in the game where we've already voted to leave it in at their direction, if we want to have them remove it.
But, so how does it work if the House has already approved our home rule petition, moved it over to the Senate, which I'm assuming is what generated all of this.
Right.
So the Senate's saying they want to remove it before they forward it to the governor and this, but we're telling them, by virtue of a discussion here, we're telling them leave it in by not addressing it.
They're not saying one way or another. They wanted to make sure that it was clear that us at the local level know that it's not a requirement that they have. So
So
they're
if-
fine with it staying in, but they're saying they would, if we said to them, we don't want that language change, they would.
But then would it go back to the House
I think
for
it would
the-
have to go back.
And then it would just delay the
Yeah,
process.
that's the
So,
concern.
yeah.
That's the concern I brought to Mike, and he said, yeah, if they decided to fight on it and dig their heels in, it would have to go back. I don't know what the timeline is, but they must have some sort of veto check at that
Yeah,
point.
from a community's perspective, it seems better to leave it alone so
Yeah.
that it doesn't go back and fight.
That would be my recommendation, and, you know, talking with Mike, he seemed to think, you know, but he just wanted to make sure that, you know, we knew that at the local level, that the Senate doesn't require that language being there. That it was a House initiative, and they're not on the same page with that initiative. So, anyway, but you have so you have a motion, before you with, with the request, and, once this should move along pretty quickly. This was sort of the last piece that they had to deal with, and not sure when the sessions start back again, but at the next session that it's listed, Senator Eldridge would move it, and hopefully would move it through, and then on to the governor.
Okay.
So,
So it's this motion, is that where I put my name?
yeah, you can just, whoever makes the motion, you can say
Then-
move.
Then whoever seconds it, put their name and then vote.
Yeah. You're talking about on the written piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the piece of paper in front of me.
Kevin, has anybody reached out to our representative on what the House action if we were to remove the 3-year?
No, I didn't,
Okay.
I didn't talk to
I was just curious.
Courtney on it, yeah. Yeah. This kind of came up last minute, and like the agenda was getting finalized, and in not looking to put it out another 2 weeks, put it on here, because he said, get it back to me, and as soon as we get it on the next round, we'll move it forward. But I kind of, my own personal feeling, I kind of assumed that it wasn't worth going down that road, particularly because it was likely that they would push back because we're requiring other communities to do the same, but,
Yeah, and I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting we become the ping pong ball between the House
Yeah,
and
no,
the Senate
yeah.
and Beacon Hill. Not of interest.
All right. So I'll read the motion. Motion, I move that consistent with the authority granted to the board in Article 3 of the October 27th, 2014 special town meeting vote, that the Board of Selectmen be authorized to approve amendments which shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of the petition as requested by the general court. That the board does approve the amendments as presented by the general court, including Senator Eldridge's amendment as attached, and requested the general court adopt the same as part of the home rule petition as attached here too. We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting? Okay, those two are done. All right, Kevin,
Thanks.
you want to do the employee health plan review?
Yeah, I won't speak too much to it at this point, but I think I've mentioned it, at least in prior meetings. Obviously, it's been no secret, I've talked about the concern for FY17 health insurance costs and anticipating that. So a few months ago, we enacted the Insurance Advisory Committee made up of retiree town employees, which is required to have employee representation. So we have representation from all the town unions as well as on the school department side. And they've had several meetings to discuss, the impacts of the current, likelihood of the current increase, as well as the mindset that we need to potentially look at a plan design change of some sort. And, that's really the Insurance Advisory Committee's job as, as the employees to consider all the facts and review some design plans. Our existing plan, I think, so that was one piece. We've been meeting with our health insurance representative from Maya for several months now. We've asked for a lot of specific data. As I've said before, health insurance trend is, between 7 and 8.5% to begin with. And to top it off, we're running extremely high, like around 125% over our experience over the last 24 months. So we then have dived in and asked Blue Cross Blue Shield representative to come in with Maya and provide some of the specific data so we can analyze what that might look like, particularly with some of the high-cost claims, and see, potentially if there's any actuarial likelihood that folks, with a progress on them, and, there's nothing that looks like that's going to lighten up in particular. So we've gone through that step. We've met with our insurance consultant, and I brought in another individual just to kind of feel it out and see if what Maya has given us is likely. After he's gotten all the data from Maya, based on what he's telling me, is the town probably deserves a 20% increase and not a 12% increase. Our experiences are terrible. We have a lot of very high claim costs, which if we were to go out in other avenues and outside of the trust, would cause issues, particularly for what we've seen the last 24 months, because we would be bearing those high claim costs directly. Anything above $75,000 is taken out of our experience, and it's pooled throughout the entire trust. So that's why in some years when we've run well, the trust has helped the town of Maynard, and when we've been higher, the trust as a whole, the Maynard has helped the whole trust, and when we've run high, others have kind of carried our weight. That's sort of the good and the bad with being in a trust. If we were doing really well and others were hurting us, you might see us still have higher costs. But the analysis shows that, and his comments have been that since we've been in Maya Trust, we haven't paid more than we should have at any year. It's been a good experience for us, and what we were considering is let's see if we can possibly put this out on the street through an RFP, and maybe we can get what's likely going to be a 12% increase to something manageable. Certainly, that's not sustainable. So after looking at those numbers and the analysis, there's no way it would recommend doing an RFP currently today, based on what I just said. I mean, there's nobody that's going to come in, and we're likely, we could see as much as a 20% increase. So this year wouldn't be the year to do it. So what are our options? Our options are, again, going back to the Insurance Advisory Committee and looking at plan design changes. And we're fortunate enough that our plan is sort of rich enough that we have the flexibility. A lot of the plans are at the already benchmark plan, the minimum required plan that the town would be required to provide. like the town of Framingham, where there's a GIC benchmark plan, and some other options that you can choose from. But we're flexible enough where our plan has some ability to make some deductible changes in some other areas, increase in copays related to emergency room visits, getting folks to use different tiered ER systems. And
Those types of changes aren't impacted by CBA.
so they are. That's why the Insurance Advisory Committee, we've been talking to them for several months now. They're starting to see, that this is a real issue, and, they're doing a lot of their own homework and exploring it, and have seemed to be receptive that, that's what we're going to end up doing.
We've got, what, three contracts coming up this year? Or-
So, that's on the list. We got 2 that are currently open, and we have 2 that have requested to negotiate, which will probably kick off the end of January, beginning of February.
Have any of those touched upon the health insurance copay issue as an issue that might be discussed?
These things are not going to affect the CBAs that directly.
Okay.
The share split does, and that is on the table, but plan design does not. So even adding copays
Okay.
can be done without
Be done outside.
without negotiation, but we're
Got it.
doing it with the advisory committee. We want the staff's input onto what they want.
Yeah, I mean, every union, every one of the town's agreements talk about the town's share of 80%, the employees 20%. That differential split discussion would absolutely be
Fantastic.
bargainable.
Yeah.
What we've talked about in the last couple, and it hasn't, the last couple we settled haven't taken, but it'll still be on the table for continued future discussion, would be, even if we don't touch that for existing employees, but for new hires.
That's the only way we
we
can
look
seemingly
at it.
make any inroad,
Yeah.
given what we're being told by the,
Yeah. But with the plan design changes, if we can, and that's what we've asked, we've gone back and asked Maya to put together some, there's over like 100 different types of a la carte menus that this could look like, right? So we've asked them to kind of, where the areas we think that we can focus on that might have some meaningful notice. We change a couple of things, we might get a 0.5%, but if we make some of these meaningful plan design changes that, like I said, with the copay, some of the copay and deductibles, we might see a few percent, 3-4%. But we don't know what those numbers are going to look like yet, because they're still running that analysis. We also are limited with time, right? So we got to make some of these decisions and get some of that data soon. This at the annual town meeting, like we attend every year, the Saturday Maya luncheon, which I'll attend. They usually will release that range, which sets the floor and a ceiling. Last year they chose not to do that, but we're fully anticipating that they'll release it this year. So, that range could be 4 to 14, depending. We'll know what the maximum ceiling is. As I said, the way our losses in the way we've been running, we're gonna be at the higher end of anything, for certain. Just the HMO subscribers, especially, that particular item has run considerably high. So this is early in the stage, but I wanted the board to be aware of the steps that we're taking, and because we recognize that it's a significant cost on the budget, and it's a real thing, piece. So we've always, we meet frequently with our Maya rep, and we're constantly trying to come up with solutions that provide benefits to our employees, and but also the town can save. If you recall, FY16's budget was saved by some of the measures they took with changing the MedX retiree plan, and saved us about $350,000. So those, we continue to look at how we can get over this hurdle, but it's nationwide, and a lot of the Affordable Care Act pieces have added to trend. So even if I guess to that point, even if our experiences were fantastic, the trend number, I mean, we're still looking at, it's still a sizable number. You know, you might get a 6% or 7% increase, but the days, at least now, of a 2 or 3%, they're not gonna happen. That's why I'd be skeptical. Last year, the year prior was a 2 to 12% floor, so the minimum anybody got was 2%. Last year's floor, you remember what they set that at?
I want to say 4.
I think it was 4 and 14 or something like that. So that it would kind of that really only tells us the worst case scenario number. We've been told to, recommend budgeting for 12%, 10 to 12%, which is huge. So before I get into the budget piece, is there any questions on what we've been doing? Again, we had another Insurance Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. We had Art Bomagen in from Millennium Health, our insurance consultant that has been with the town for years. It's like 84, I think.
Maya comes back on January 20th with the analysis Kevin mentioned, and then Art comes back February 2nd to introduce us to an exchange, which is a different type of health insurance program. Not for people to be sold on anything, but to get the IAC's knowledge up on the different options.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not good news, but, we continue to look at that and hope particularly those that have been on the high, the high end get better soon, if possible. Any questions on insurance stuff? Anything you want to add?
It will only put you all to sleep. It's an incredibly dense topic, and if anyone really wants to know, I'd be happy to have a private meeting.
I guess from my perspective, the biggest takeaway is, we're told one thing by Maya, and you got to take that somewhat, for what it is. That's why we continuously push back and ask for questions. We asked for Blue Cross rep directly to come in, but we also didn't settle on that. That's why I brought the NFP in, and some of those guys to look at that data and say, look,
NFP from Hanover?
How I don't know where they're at.
Where they're located?
Yeah,
Somewhere
they're a
south
global
of
company,
here.
but
Who from NFP came?
Ken Lombardi.
he's the expert on municipal, health insurance plans, and they do consulting work, but they also do their own broker work as well. But he's a consultant for many communities, and say, okay, it's a completely independent person that hasn't worked in the town, isn't involved with Maya, and get the experiences from Maya, and then do the analysis. And that's when he came back with, you guys have done extremely well since you've been in the trust. And particularly this year, if we end up with 12%, say thank you and move on. But it was nice for me to hear that, because I've always seen, can we do better? Can they sharpen their pencil better? And it doesn't seem that way, but anyway. Budget, FY17 budget, I provided a kind of the first you've seen of the preliminary revenue model for the FY17 budget, and of course we'll continue to talk about this in more detail, and this is a kind of third revenue projection, which, a couple of things to highlight. We've increased.
You sent us something on this, Kevin?
It's in Dropbox, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is it in? Yeah. Sorry. It has a kind of a 5 or 6 page packet that's not easy to read because it's done on Excel. But you can see the columns. This particularly focus is on the revenue side, is what we're talking about tonight. And we've increased area that I think I'm comfortable with for now. One area that has gone up is the new growth number that we've got in there currently as a placeholder. We know our 2.5% increase. A couple other areas we've honed in a little bit. You see, it's a little concerning because It's based on the revised 16 budget from state aid, but what I'm concerned about is they're talking about cuts now at the state level. So this revised number, usually what we do is we level fund state aid in our revenue projections. That's the safe thing to do. So if you level fund the revenue from the original 16 budget, it's less than what we budgeted for. But we've level funded from the revised budget, assuming that, you know, they're not going to cut state aid from that number. I know the governor is a huge, as is the lieutenant governor, a huge proponent of state aid and of local communities, but at the end of the day, you know, there's some challenges that they're seeing.
The
revenue and-
reporting today, that was actually, it might have been yesterday, but, and I forget where I saw it, but the governor is not leaning towards any local aid cuts
Yeah.
at all. It's all service-related, various other locations. Very, very clear that there will not be.
That's what
any
we're
cuts.
hoping. I spoke with Rep. Hogan today on a side of that, because she's concerned about her program getting cut for the, if you remember, it got cut last year, the 9C cut, the Edge Commission. And, you know, if there's some cuts, you know, that would be a program cut that could be impacted with the 9C cuts. And she wasn't certain on, you know, on the local aid stuff, but I think we'll be okay. I think, you know, we'll survive that, but we know we're not out of it. But, so at this point, you know, I've level funded the, that with the revised 16 local aid numbers, which is slightly higher, but I think is a good number. The other area on the flip side of that, so we've had an increase in local aid, you know, some Chapter 70 money, et cetera, but we've also had a drastic increase in assessments, particularly due to AMSA. And without a doubt, it's AMSA-driven, the Advanced Math and Science Academy. We've seen it double that enrollment and double the students there. So that has the assessment as a charter school. So we've seen, you know, some more local aid money, but our assessment's gone up because we're sending more students than we ever have to the Advanced Math and Science Academy. So that is a direct budget impact when it comes to, you know, on the revenue side. So we've seen the assessments have gone up a little bit. There's some slight increase on local receipts. There's a more detail in here as to the local receipt breakdowns on where some of that's coming from. The other thing is the water indirect costs and sewer indirect costs essentially account for some of the salary pieces, but they're not known yet. That could go up a little bit. It's unlikely to go down, but that revenue anticipation could go up, and we won't really know that until Toby dives into that a little bit closer as to what those indirect costs may be. But it's likely we have good numbers. We won't get that, probably more detail into that with him until probably February. Any of the good news is that I'm going to have to make a lot of cuts to present a level funded budget to the board, but if there's any hope that we'll see some increase in some revenue areas or a decrease in expense costs, i.e. we get our final health insurance number, it might be an opportunity that we can put some of that cut back in depending on, you know, where it's at. It's part of, you know, it's the annual issue with not knowing the health insurance costs, final number, not knowing state numbers, not knowing certain things. So that's, as I said, I have some more details in the back. The next sheet just shows the levy limits for 16. From back to 2005 actuals to date on new growth by year. Yeah, I think 18 is looking pretty good. I think that the 300,000 mark is a target. You see 350 on here, but we backed that down in another revenue model. I think it's put forth on the first sheet as 300,000. We've currently in 16 have budgeted for 216, and we hit 428. I think we can do 300, particularly in 18, because I think we'll pick up some new growth with what, knowing what projects are coming down the pipe. If we had a lot of additional revenue, I would be a lot more conservative, but we don't have much leverage, and we have a lot of expenses. The next page just shows the debt exclusion by fiscal year. We got about a little under 100,000 of debt rolling off. That will just, it helps, but we also are picking up debt with the Assabet School. And then there's a breakdown on the kind of the local receipts, make up with original budget and actuals received. And then the last page is just sort of a FYI highlight of available funds, which show the current balances through the end of November as available fund money that exists within our stabilization accounts, as well as other accounts that the town has, including the free cash numbers and retained earnings numbers for water, sewer, just so that you have those numbers as to where we are to date. As you know, the budgets were due into me yesterday. I've already started to go through them and preliminary look. We're about $700,000 over our revenue, so there's going to be there's got to be some hard look at what we got there.
Did you get something from the school?
Yeah, the school's
So
numbers
that's
there.
included in
It's actually pretty reasonable proposal that they've submitted. They haven't done what historically have done, which is the kind of the three budgets. The one I've asked for, the one that they're the sort of the level funded budget, and then they call it a growth budget, which has been historically like a 10% increase. They've submitted one budget with another caveat line item asking for an additional resource, which I think we've worked out to be able to cover that. So right now their request is fairly reasonable. I mean, it's under 4%. It's like 3 something. And yeah, I've asked specifically if they factored in if the school committee as a whole, as well as the budget subcommittee, have had the discussions around, that they're aware and have had the discussions that the Assabet principal and interest debt payment is on our end within the budget as a whole, and that needs to be considered when they put their budget forward. And also, I keep hitting home on, the benefits side and the impacts of the health insurance, with them being, the biggest of the subscribers. So Bob has told me and Pete has told me they took that into consideration when they put their budget request in. So.
Did you see your budget from everyone? Did anybody not meet the deadline?
No. Yeah, everybody's got their budget in, submitted. Yeah. So there's some that are going to be, there's some if you know about some of the expenses, some of the big cost departments, I have sit-down meetings further with to find out behind some of the requests, but there's obvious reductions there. So 17 is going to be a challenging year, and I think I think we'll be in good shape moving forward once we get through 17, and hopefully some of these projects we have on the town meeting will move and get some more revenue in town, and we'll be in good shape. Anything else on the budget? Good. It's very early on. Will be a lot more discussion. If any of you individually have any specific questions, let me know. One thing we haven't dove into fully yet is the water sewer stuff. That's usually a little bit later. But I think he's submitted all those numbers. That's it.
One quick question. on the stabilization funds,
Yes.
we're pulling that balance as of 7/1/2015. So does that include the 2 emergency sewer repairs that totaled, what was that, like 300,000? I could be wrong with that number.
What did we do?
Florida Road, Mill
Yeah.
Street. I want to say, I thought Florida was 125-ish.
Yeah.
And again, these are rough off the top of my head, remembrance numbers, not, and I can't remember
Couldn't have
what,
taken that out of stabilization, that requires a town meeting.
Yeah,
vote.
the numbers that you see there are,
that was, okay.
we're gonna have
That
to
came
do
out
some
of-
house cleaning work
I just want to make
for
sure that
those
that
costs.
number is
Yeah.
what it is, we're not going to go pull that, and that
Correct,
we're
yeah.
not showing $770,000 in there, when in reality,
Yeah, that's
we're going to
fair.
either need to pull something, or we're not going to be pushing surplus funds over to it.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Well. Good.
Next topic, I guess.
What we got now?
Number 13, DPW Operations Manager, contract renewal discussion.
Yeah, so this is a time for Chris Okafor's contract renewal. He's got a 6-month notice in there with regards to the board renewing his contract as operations manager. His contract is effectively current through June 30th. Requested a couple of months ago, and it's, we're still within the provisional time to renew the operations manager's employment contract. And so that's the request before the board. I think, there's been a lot of challenges in the DPW office, with staffing and staffing levels, demands. I think, there's areas, continues to be areas for improvement, like in every department, but I think operationally, there's been a lot of very effective changes that have happened within the organization of the divisions, and getting more production out of the staff that's there, and the management of the personnel has been very effective. And as have the tasks and operations within that piece. There's still I think there's still, you could argue there's still some staffing shortage issues within the DPW. Chris expressly has expressed a need for additional, some clerical staff, which obviously, budget isn't going to account for that type of stuff. But in a perfect world with that type of setup, I think the clerical and administrative functions that he has to deal with could be better streamlined. But overall, I think, certainly since his time with the town of Maynard, the DPW department has moved forward, and we've made a lot of progress. Him and I meet weekly, so I'm well versed in what they're going on, what they got going on in their lists, and he prepares the agenda, and there's always a dozen items that we can talk about and discuss. So I don't know if you have any questions on that, or this is the first time the board is seeing that request.
What, Chris, if I may,
Go ahead.
what criteria are we using to measure, like, any department head, in this case, the operations manager for DPW's effectiveness? So, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that you seem to be indicated gives you a positive feeling about, but what's the measurable items that we actually take into account to grade out how things are actually going and how this person's
Yeah.
leading? And
That's fair. That's what makes it difficult from a board that, is vested with the authority to, provide contracts. Someone that, it's a difficult task, because the board is being asked to do something that they're not here and responsible for the day-to-day operations of it. There's some obvious notice that, of performance, that's, community conversation and your own assessment, but as far as it's tough to gauge a performance of an employee, at your level. Similar issue with any of them, police or fire, that you don't have a direct day-to-day oversight with.
Do you have sort of a scorecard for how you grade out your own, like I'm not sure how the process is, like a checklist of 10 things that you're looking for that, in this case, Chris would be providing, and how did he do against those, and you're having
Yeah,
one?
we've gone back and forth, and as of predecessors of mine, as to the benefit of, performance evaluations at those levels versus more goal-setting type of goals and metrics of where they've reached, and some of that's been worked out. Particularly with him, I meet with him more than any other, other than Andrew and and probably Bill Nemser. I meet with him more than any other department head we have. So I have a good sense of what he's doing and what's going on. And like I said, there's always going to be room for improvement no matter who we're talking
No, I'm
about.
just curious, just because this is the first one that's come up since I've been in the
Yeah,
seat, right?
yeah.
So I'm trying to understand how we're,
Right.
objectively taking a look at the roles. In this case, it happens to be the DBW ops manager, so you're asking us to renew his contract, we give the okay to do that, and putting a lot of onus on you to make sure things are going okay. I'm just curious as to what is the criteria that we're actually
Right.
holding department heads of this type accountable towards, so that we
Yeah,
can.
no, it's fair. That's what.
It's almost like these meetings should happen in an executive session before we come to public meeting, because there's particulars that you want to discuss about renewing a contract with.
Well, that's what that's what we will do
All right.
in executive session. This is just the notice that says, okay, we're going to vote to renew it. Whether you do it or don't, he's still an employee, an indefinite employee of the town. So you guys are doing at this point, you've already, the position's appointed, is negotiating the terms of which he works in. And all of that is done in executive session.
Okay.
But you're right, that's really the only difference in this town, if you look at a charter between a town administrator often and a town manager is, and that's why most towns have gone to a town manager form of government, because they're not asking their selectmen that may have a minimal view of how an individual employee is working, what they're, or in some cases distorted view, it's their perception, we're seeing it from somewhat of an outside, to then, to do these things. So under most of those charter changes with the town manager form of government, the appointing authority is vested with the town manager, other than the town manager himself. In our form of government, we've got a mix of some of that. There's a hybrid of that. So you're right. A lot of the onus is on the town manager. I look at it similar to, the police chief. You're asking, you guys ultimately are appointing the candidate, but if it's the wrong person in the job and things aren't getting done, the leverage is with the police chief. It's a similar comparison. I don't know, David's been on the board the longest. I don't know if there's more you would add to that.
Unfortunately, due to the history that has preceded the current director, I don't believe in the last 9 years that we've actually reappointed a director of the DPW, because we had one who was interim for quite a period of time and never renewed his contract before he retired. We had one that retired before, then we had one that left under the worst of circumstances one can imagine, and then we have Chris. So this is the first time in the last 8 years that we've had to reappoint or to decide to make a move regarding continuing the contract. From my perspective in answering, and I get Terrence's point, but I think that we, as representatives of the town, get a sense as to what the perception of the residents are, right or wrong. And then we also have to gauge the recommendation from you as his direct supervisor. My sense is, as you said, there are things that obviously could work better, and that we could improve upon. And that's true about all aspects of life, I guess. bottom line is that, I think overall, from my perspective, it's probably a contract that we should renew. I think the continuity is necessary, and it's not like there are a lot of problems going on. And again, there are things that, yes, we can work out, and we'll talk about those when we get into executive session about setting some goals for Chris and his future and whatever, and ways that he can improve. But overall, it's a long-winded answer to your question that, no, we've never done this in my time on the board because of...
In some, I mean, that's fair, I agree with you there, knowing the history. But it's similar to what have we done with, the police and fire chiefs in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all, as well. I mean, I don't recall, at least at the let's vote to
enter into discussion.
Enter into discussion. I don't know of any real conversations that have happened for any of those reappointments either. Or they're not even reappointments for those, successive agreements, so. I agree.
Maybe it's the
Terrence,
wording of the motion, Kevin, because the wording, the motion says the motion to renew the DPW Operations Manager employment contract. So to me, when you're renewing a contract, you're effectively saying, yes, okay, continue to work, right? It's not up till June though, right? The end of June?
Yeah, I get
So-
that. And I
So that's
think-
what's confusing for
Yeah,
me.
I
I'm
think
reading
you're
this
right.
and it's like I'm voting to renew a contract, but I'm like, what am I renewing for? Like,
Voting to author, in
Yeah.
reality, what we're doing is voting Kevin to, authorizing Kevin
That's
to
all. So it's a
enter into
little-
negotiations to discuss the renewal, to discuss new terms of the contract to be
Yeah.
brought to the board eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So I
all.
don't
So it's-
I don't understand what language you don't, what.
It says to,
The
well,
word
it says the
renew.
first thing, read it. It says to renew the DPW Operations Manager employment contract.
Right.
That's the first part of the sentence.
Right, that's what we're looking to do. We're not looking to reappoint
Eventually,
them.
we'll get there, but tonight,
Yeah,
we're
tonight
not.
we're not doing that though. We're empowering you to negotiate a contract, is what we're saying, right? Or,
Yeah,
and then we're gonna look at specifics later on
but
with
you're
the,
still voting to, so you're saying we're gonna go through this motions and never renew it?
Well, it's...
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that based on tonight's motion or vote from the board, it doesn't mean that we've authorized his new contract 6 months in advance.
Except that the last sentence,
No.
the last half of
I
it
don't think it
says...
reads that way either. It's the exact same language as the police and fire chief contract renewals.
But it does say to negotiate a successor agreement for review and ratification.
It's not, there's no ratification. I mean, it's no different than the collective bargaining agreements, which happen, at least 6 months out. It's the negotiating the terms, which is required in their agreement that
Well,
there's
I-
a
I-
6-month
so-
notice
Notice that we're
that the
intending to
board
renew.
says we intend to renew
Yeah.
the contract.
But before it's considered officially renewed, there's a review and we have to ratify it.
Correct.
Correct.
So there's another step. It's kind of like zoning. You're voting, you're going to vote to zone, change the zoning, and then at some point, someone's going to review and ratify.
Yeah.
Polished up on that presentation.
Maybe you're just
Big
used
on
to this
that.
language all the time, so to you
But-
it doesn't,
You know,
but I'm saying, to me, when I read
get what
that,
you're
that's
saying,
the
yeah.
first part of the sentence.
I get your point, Terrence,
Right.
but I think it's really just, I guess, it's semantics. The
Okay.
issue is we are
You're welcome to change
agreeing.
the motion how you see fit.
Well, no,
The step that needs to happen is we need to say, we need to answer him and say, yes, we agree to go into negotiations on your contract. At the end of that, the terms, whatever, none of that is agreed on until both parties ratify it. So I guess that, however you want to word it, I'm fine with, but that was just taken from, I think, the police chiefs.
Yeah, but following along with the discussion that David and Terrence had started, it seems as though, and I'm not saying that you come off as being frustrated by it, but the system itself is frustrating in that, you and Andrew are going to negotiate this contract and bring it back for ratification. Per the town charter, we're required to review and ratify and accept and approve these things as they come up with the police and the fire and with other things in town. So, really, I'm uncomfortable with that aspect of it in that it's just a rubber stamp at the end. Because we're signing, the five of us are going to sign it. I'm not saying that there's anything that I've seen that has been something I wouldn't want to sign or wouldn't want to approve, but it's almost like it comes back as a
But if you
a
felt
done
that way, you
deal.
wouldn't have to rubber stamp it.
Huh?
It's not a rubber stamp.
No, it's
because
not.
If you saw that, you would
I-
say no to this contract.
Oh, I understand that, but the process kind of pushes you in that direction, in the sense that, you know, you, Kevin, and Chris are gonna negotiate this contract, or
Me
Kevin
and
and Chris.
Chris, yeah.
So you guys are gonna negotiate a contract, and it's gonna come to us more or less in its final form, you know? So, you know,
Yeah, I mean-
I'm just following along with the information in
Streamlines the
executive session. and
ultimate
everything.
process, it
It's-
avoids the board having to have 5 executive sessions to get to where
No,
I'm bringing it to. I get,
I
I
understand- I
mean, from the
understand
board's
that.
perspective of standing there, but, in the board's vested authority by the charter to do that, but, it's I guess it requires some leap of faith in the management that is hired to negotiate it.
Yeah, there's
I'm
certainly, there's
with
certainly
Kevin,
that.
I'm with
but-
Kevin on the majority of what Kevin's saying. The one thing that I think that the board gets involved in, we want to be able to establish, and we will talk about these, we want to be able to establish objectives or, you know, things that we think are important for the DPW to engage in and pursue over the course of
and those
this
are
contract.
conversations that
We want to
should be
talk about what type of parameters we want to put on
Annual
increases.
agenda items. Yeah,
How it affects our budget and how it's going to affect future negotiations with other parties. So I think we have those discussions with Kevin, you know, not in a series of 5 executive sessions, but maybe in a couple where Kevin gets an understanding of where we're coming from. And he comes back to us with a thing that says, here's what I would like to propose. Do you agree? And we debate that and discuss it.
It's just to the point, I think the term that Terrence used was, what are the measurables? You know, what are you, you know, as the representative of the town with Chris, what are the measurables that we're using to make the determinations as to, you know, where the contract goes and what, you know, how does it increase and what changes? I mean, that's just the piece that I'm, you know, I'm not uncomfortable with it. I'm just not familiar with it, you know, just so we know, you know, hey, when we go into an executive session, because it's, you know, a personal contract nature or a negotiation, where it's, here's where, you know, here's what we see, here's how it grades out, and this is where we're going. That's the type of thing that I think we're just asked, I think that's what we agree we're asking for, is that type of information. So that when you do give us the final version, at least we know how we got to the final version, without, you know, getting into, you know, another 2 hours of conversation about, you know, how the cemetery look, and, you know, how many of these took place, and
I'm fine with letting managers, especially upper management, handle what they need to do, hiring, and my simple question is, the way this motion is reads to me, and I think I'm a pretty intelligent person, the first thing it says is to renew such employment contract, right? The wording, to me, could be different. If in reality, we're not really renewing this contract right now, we're essentially allowing the kickoff of a process then, is what you're telling me.
Right.
Right? So all I'm saying is maybe that should be a little different, because that's why when I saw renew, that's why I started asking the questions about what are the measurables that we're actually looking at. If we're not even at that point yet, then my question about the measurables isn't even valid yet, because you're gonna handle that with your own grading system, so on and so forth. But me seeing renew made me think tonight, we're voting to bring this guy in 6 months early, and that's what made me question it, so that's really where I'm coming from.
Terrence, do you think to add a word that said, or a couple words, to express the desire of the board to renew the contract, we are, you know, so basically what the intent here is to allow Chris to know that he doesn't have to go out and look for a job.
Yeah, exactly. I want to make him comfortable,
We're telling
right?
him it's
Yeah.
our intent to renew the contract, but we're giving
Yeah,
Kevin.
poor Chris, if you're watching this, I apologize. You just happen to be the first one that's up on the docket. It could have been anybody.
All you need to do is change the word renew to negotiate.
Yeah.
Motion to negotiate the DPW Operations Manager employment contract and authorize the town, you know,
Yeah, the contract,
I think
it's
the end-
similar, it's like if we don't come to an agreement after July 1 for the fire department, those guys are still working here. They're working under the existing terms. May not be happy with it, and eventually they have the ability, because as a union, and they go to arbitration, et cetera. Eventually, they'll get a contract. This is similar. He's indefinite appointed, so it's negotiating the terms of it, and it's essentially renewing those terms. But, yeah, no, I get what you're saying with the language. It's the intent is to, you know, enter negotiations for a successor.
Authorize you to enter into negotiations.
Agreement, yeah.
Kevin, it's correct that basically that this is based off sort of the negative of this motion, which would be, we have to decide whether or not we're going to renew.
Correct.
So basically, this vote would strictly be to tell Chris that he's not coming back after July 1, if we were to vote in a negative.
Or he's coming back at,
But I mean, but this,
Same.
the point is that, the point is that it's 6 months before the thing. We have to declare some intention.
correct.
It's not to renew a contract, it's not to do any such thing. It's to
At
strictly.
this point, correct, yeah.
It's to declare the intention that, yep, he's gonna be here and we're gonna continue, and we're gonna negotiate a succeeding agreement. Or we're not,
Correct.
and that's what it is, and the same for this motion and the next.
Difficulty is it's not laid out that clearly for department heads, but it's very transcribed for me. So it specifically says in the charter, the steps that the board needs to follow and notices and all that type of stuff. And as a contract employee as an employee with a 3-year employment agreement term on the terms of the employment, it also, it's a peace of mind thing of the 6-month notice that, hey, obviously a negative vote reflects that, yeah, hey, come August, he could still be working here, but clearly there's no support of that, so maybe I do start looking. That's kind of what it means, but you're right, it's basically answering, back to saying, yes, we intend to renegotiate another contract. Yeah, so these motions are all, unless it's been vetted by town council, they're advisory. Most boards make up motions on the fly. We just do this to try to take some of the thought out of it. So you're welcome, Chris, as the chair, to amend or change the motion as just anybody who makes a
Anybody can
motion.
do it.
Talking through it, I see where you're coming through, Terrence. That
So,
makes
I'm not
sense.
trying to be difficult, I just
Yeah,
want
no, I see
to
what you're
understand what I'm signing up for, is what it comes down to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next time, put yours in front of this one in case this discussion comes up, so.
Maybe. There's a strategy behind that.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess, I don't know, is it even, are we okay with the language as it is, given that explanation? That we're just,
Well, I could say that I move to authorize
Yeah, move this to the back.
to authorize the town administrator to negotiate a successor agreement for eventual BOS review and ratification with the intent to eventually renew the DPW operations manager employment contract. So the intent is there.
I would second that motion.
Sounds good.
I think it's a good motion.
Thank you.
I'm sure it, yeah, okay. So. All right, any further discussion about it?
No.
All those in favor? It was 5-0.
See if the minutes come out. Correct?
Someone better call in those minutes tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, number 14. Town Administrator reappointment and contract renewal discussion. Motion is to reappoint the Town Administrator for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2019, and furthermore, for the entire board to negotiate a successor agreement for ratification.
On this one, similarly, wouldn't we say it's to express our intent to reappoint town administrator for a 3-year term effective July 1?
No,
No?
no.
This
Because
comes out of
this
charter.
is an actual.
So this is necessary
that
for...
They have to, yeah, for the term.
But, all right,
That
so
board needs to vote to reappoint the town administrator within
I understand
6
that,
months, or not.
but if,
The
Well-
reappointment and the successor agreement are contingent upon each other, I guess is.
okay, so. No,
they're not contingent upon one another.
are we, by doing July 1st, we're moving this up to put you in line with the others?
The end with, yeah, as we talked about with
So-
the fiscal year
so-
alignments.
All right, so typically, when does your actual contract today end?
I think it's August.
So we're gonna pull
16th
pull it back a little bit
Yeah,
to bring it in line with the fiscal year and the rest of the
Right.
contracts in-house.
so that it's a fiscal
Just-
year
just so
alignment,
that, you know, so
three-year
the-
term.
So the world's aware, so someone's not calling us up and,
Correct.
you know, telling us something crazy.
Yeah,
Okay.
mine's the only position in the town administrator's position is the only one in the charter that specifies a three-year term, so it can't be more than a three-year term, because the charter specifically states that. And everybody else is an indefinite appointment, and the school committee appoints the school superintendent, and by statute, they have the ability to appoint for up to 5 years.
Okay.
So that he has a 5-year term, and the town administrator is a 3-year term. Yeah. So I've actually just kind of prepared a brief memo, request to the board. We've had an opportunity to read that, which highlights the terms within the employment agreement, of notice to, prior to the expiration, to notify the board.
Honorable, I like that.
As well as,
That's a little facetious, I think.
as well as the section in the charter, the town charter, the current charter that deals with the town administrator's contract renewal. And, you know, again, I've enjoyed my tenure and hope to continue to serve as maintenance town administrator. I think we've made significant accomplishments in, you know, the time been not only as acting town administrator, but a little more than 2 years in the permanent role. And, you know, I hope to continue to serve the town for many more years. So that's my request before the board, and, you know, again, be similar as discussion we just had with Chris, you know, executive session, contract discussion.
Okay, so that's done in executive session as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, I mean, I guess the motion is based on the charter, so do we have a second for this motion?
Second.
All right, any further discussion about
Make the
Kevin's
motion.
reappointment? I read the motion, so that's been made, and he seconded it. So.
Want to read it again?
Read it again. The motion is to reappoint the town administrator for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2019. And furthermore, for the entire board to negotiate a successor agreement for ratification.
Seconded by?
Seconded by Mr. Donovan. And do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? 5.
Thank you.
So thank us, we haven't negotiated yet.
But it's our intent.
He was so
Tim's
happy.
walking out on you, though.
He was so happy he left. Okay, so 129 Parker, anything? Nothing?
Yeah, added this on there, Mr. Chair, just because I felt, I didn't know if there was no other opportunity. We haven't had a meeting since our December 21st meeting, our open house that we sponsored, so I didn't know if the board, you know, if there was any comments or feedback or discussion relevant to Parker Street as a result of that. And the only thing I have on that is John Witten, myself, and the developer and their attorney met again for kind of the first time after the holiday to continue the discussion on the development agreement stuff. You know, we're there and we're advocating for more.
Okay.
But we'll have more discussion on that piece.
Yeah.
But that's really, because of the holiday week, John was out for a week and a half in New York, and then we had our open session. This was really the first update of the, you know, that we've had.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, have you heard anything about, has anyone gone to their open
Yeah,
sessions?
they've had about 70.
In that trailer that sits there?
He told me about 75 people.
Okay.
They have another one that's scheduled for this Saturday, I believe.
Yeah.
He said it's been fairly well attended. You know, they'll get groups of 4 or 5, which, you know, depending on the personalities, gets interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, people have been coming out.
The other question is, if you come from Sudbury on 117,
Yeah.
27, so you pass, it's on your left, there's a small yellow sign that says Berkshire
Hathaway?
No, not Berkshire Hathaway, Berkshire Realty Open House or something?
I think that's the firm that they have working in there, yeah. It's a little, small little triangle sign that's there.
Yeah, it's a little, like a little mini sandwich
Yeah.
board of a sign, but it's just been there for a couple of weeks, and I don't know, what does a realty group have to do? Isn't Capital Group in there themselves hosting these meetings?
Yeah.
And I thought it was the people from the independent
That's
living.
Hawthorne. That's Hawthorne. It says Berkshire.
Yeah, it does.
And I thought the same thing for a
Yeah,
second,
I'm
but then
not
I'm looking,
aware-
it said Berkshire.
That name I haven't heard
I don't know
of.
if it's just someone's sign that's just sitting there and shouldn't be there, but it would,
Is it-
but it's
it's
been there
not-
for a couple
it's
weeks.
not part of-
school sign?
It's not part of 141?
Building next door.
No, it's clearly
I'm not sure.
on
Clearly,
the,
it's
it's on the
right-
downtown side of the driveway. You
Correct.
turn into the
I'll ask
right.
Bob.
Yeah.
If you turn into the right, it's on your right side. But it's been there for a couple of weeks, and
Yeah, I'll ask
Since they
Bob
put
what
the
that is.
trailer in, it's
you
been
would,
there.
by looking at the sign, if you were interested, you'd go in there looking, what's the purchase opportunity? What's the rental
Probably the
opportunity?
company
It's
that
a
owns
weird
the
sign
trailer.
that's sit there.
It could own the
It could be
trailer,
nothing.
yeah.
I don't know, huh?
Probably own the
You
trailer.
know, like a roofer will put a sign
Oh,
up when
yeah.
he's doing it at someone's house.
Is it like an arrow? Like,
Well, basically, it's an open house sign.
yeah.
Every Sunday morning, there's 25 of them throughout town with an arrow, a little arrow
Yeah,
at the
right,
bottom, and
yeah.
it says who the group is, and then
Yeah, I haven't
points
noticed
in.
it. I haven't been by there.
I just saw it the last couple of times I drove by on 27, and I just thought it was an odd place
It's
for
been
a
there since they put the trailer in.
sign, because
We'll have it
you've
picked up
never,
and dropped off at Patty
But
Lane
you-
next week.
there's never been any discussion about anything like that before,
No.
like
yeah,
another
no.
group or anything like that, so that was just
I'll ask Bob what that's all about.
curiosity more than a concern.
But he seemed, yeah, he said people
Not selling
have
it.
come out,
Okay.
during the window. He said he estimated about 75 people over the course of the two I think they've had, and then they have another one this Saturday, so.
Okay.
It's a very good turnout, especially considering we had over 100 people at the
Yeah,
high school auditorium, too. Stopped counting after 100, couldn't register anymore.
yeah.
The feedback I've gotten has been pretty positive. Ways to learn, I guess, some of the comments were that we had to clean up the whole discussion on the intersections and I know that Bob DiPietri's done a slide. I don't know if that's going to be incorporated into ours or not.
Yeah, we talked about that, and everybody
Because
felt-
there was a misunderstanding that there's going to be 7, lanes entering into the particular
yeah.
location. So that was one thing. There were a couple other comments made about some clearing up some confusion in various things. But overall, the feedback I've gotten has been very positive.
Yeah, that's available now. They've put out, and pushed out the intersection improvements for the intersections as well as, the front entry improvements that they would be required to do. Those have all been identified. And that was a direct result of the conversations we were having about what the development agreement provides at a minimum. It identifies in yellow sort of the intersections that they're going to do, and the 3 intersections that they're gonna give us like $267,000 to do under the current agreement. So that map is available and has been pushed out. There's also another one that illustrates the building height locations of the location of
Yep.
the residential and the
Where
Hawthorne.
the
in the-
there was the one with where the 50-foot building
Yeah.
Yes,
can be
exactly.
located. And
Yeah.
I know there was some commenting back and forth, which make it clear that they cannot, despite the fact that it shows it go all the way to the back into the wetland. They're
Yeah.
not planning to build a 50-foot building in the wetland, and they're
Right.
apparently going to revise that.
Yeah.
The other comment, as I think about it, that people had suggested that we emphasize even though, and it's tricky, and I've explained this to people, we've got an existing bylaw, and we're revising it to a new bylaw. But that middle ground is what was proposed the last time. What people want to know from what they've fed me with is, what's the difference between what the proposal was in '09, or whatever year it was, and what the proposal is in '16? In other words, we touched upon it in the presentation, where, in the prior development agreement, there was $0 amount coming to the town of Maynard. There was a building coming to the town of Maynard.
You're
but there-
talking, so you're talking about 13.
Yeah, excuse me.
9 is what is currently
Yeah, so
exists.
the
9,
year.
13.
So 13,
So 13,
I
they-
don't know, I don't
the-
even know
the-
why it's relevant.
the people have expressed, several people have said, they want to know what is the difference between the defeated I guess that's a better way to put it, the defeated proposal and the zoning that was included there and the zoning that's being presented at this particular town meeting, and where the benefits is for the town.
I would say the biggest, yeah, I mean, not without getting into it too much, the biggest difference is the uses. The current bylaw had a planning board direction to review. It took into consideration the planning sessions and hearing what residents wanted, and that's probably the biggest change in there, which resulted other changes because of the uses, the table uses that have changed to allow for healthcare and certain stuff that the 13
Agreed.
agreement wasn't really.
That's a lot of muddy water, because you have 2009, which exists.
Yeah, that's the one we're talking about.
It's in place. You have 2016, which is a proposed zoning bylaw changes.
And 13,
And you
which is
want,
just-
and you want to
13 was
also throw into the middle of that,
Yeah.
what wasn't, and what never was, and cannot be. Why even, in all due respect, what difference does 2013 make if in 2013 you didn't like it because it wasn't 2009? It's 2009 versus 2016. 2013 is done. It's gone, and
Yeah.
it doesn't exist.
But I do-
To bring it in today and to
And
try and.
what my point is that I've been asked several times about why this one and not the one we defeated.
13, yeah.
The things you said on the 21st, David, I think are the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, you're filmed. You should just get a snippet of it and
It's-
post it on your little
it's-
page.
I don't,
You said it about as clearly and thoroughly
But these-
as anyone could have that night. It was excellent.
but the discussion has been, and the intent is that the pictures in the the blow-ups of streets, intersections,
It's gonna
buildings,
confuse a
is
lot,
not gonna be any part of the special town meeting.
Correct.
It's just gonna be a discussion about, here's what we had, the stricken version of the bylaws with the new changes is gonna go to everybody,
And the
along
steps
with the
would take
FinCom's
along.
recommendation and the steps, and then we're gonna introduce the article and go through it, and then John Whitten will discuss the changes one at a time and what the changes mean.
Yeah,
So-
he'll highlight the zoning.
I would just say, to David's point, we need to be prepared for people to step up to the microphone and unfortunately bring up 2013, even though it really doesn't exist because it was voted down. It doesn't have a place in this day, but in someone's mind, they may actually think that it does, right? And
I
that's.
agree.
Yeah, that's
I-
all.
It's just a lot of,
It is.
it's just an awful lot of information to try and put into however much amount of time that the town moderator is going to allow for this
Yeah.
article to be
We're gonna have some of those
discussed.
bullets at least
Yeah.
noted for our end. I mean, like I said, I do think the biggest piece was the uses which triggered, the uses which is what triggered other changes.
Yeah.
I think the other important piece that needs to be stressed on Monday is that a positive vote for these changes does not put shovels in the ground.
Correct.
Yeah, it happened
And
today.
That's another
yeah.
point. Yep.
It is merely the framework under which a project can be proposed in the future, and then everything within that project is still subject to planning board approval,
That's correct.
town building commissioner approval, and special permits where they apply. So this is only step one of many.
And town meeting approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Step one of an
It's step
important
one.
process. And I was in the barber shop today, and actually that came up, and I had to explain to somebody that this vote on next Monday, if it goes in the way we all hope it goes, still doesn't mean that construction starts this spring at this.
Yeah,
There's
right.
still more things that have to happen. And to further that point is, the woman who's been writing emails and writing in, thinking that a vote on no means nothing happens at that place. And that's not the case, because they have the right to do things right now under the existing rules, right? So there's some misinformation still out there. We should be prepared to answer on the floor if it comes up.
And I'm sure that someone's gonna bring up that swear word with the B on the end of it. It's not gonna be me. So, all right, that's 129
I
Parker.
know most of them, but I can't think of that one.
I'll whisper it to you later.
I'm sure you will.
Bob?
No, it starts with a 40.
Oh, I got
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, okay. I gotta draw
I was
sharp
saying,
lines for
that's
you
not-
guys.
Yeah.
Threw me off,
This is
'cause that's
connect
not a
the
word.
dots today.
No.
All right, economic development updates, please.
Yeah, be brief on these. Don't have a whole lot of updates here with the holiday and, not much going on, but the Economic Development Committee did meet this morning, opportunity to attend and have a discussion with them. Bob DiPietri was there, presented to the Economic Development Committee, and they voted unanimously to support the town meeting article. They also, at a prior meeting, had voted to support, unanimously to support the Mill and Main warrant article as well. So that was the Economic Development Committee.
Excellent.
They also, new business after the new year, because they're an ad hoc committee, they're not a July 1 appointment, they're a January 1. They have restructured and have elected a new chair, Dave Krieger, is an at-large member, and has been a great addition to the Economic Development Committee over the last several months. And
How do you spell his last name?
Krigger. Krieger.
Say that again. K-R-I.
Krigger. It's like
That's how you say
Krieger.
Dave.
Krieger.
Was he have a business downtown, or?
No, he's not a business owner. There are some representatives on there that are local business owners. His background is in marketing and some of that stuff, I think, right? But he's, I think, going to do a great job. He's the right guy to move the committee forward. And then the current chair was elected to serve as the vice chair. That's Chris Worthy. So Chris Worthy will now serve as the vice chair, and Dave will serve as the chairman. So we got Mill and Main, the sign plan has been submitted. They'll be heard at a January 26th planning board meeting for their project and their comprehensive sign plan. As you know, tonight, the dealership for the rent-a-car, the location, the former Enterprise Rent-A-Car location on Powder Mill, they're scheduled for January 26th as well before them, but that's a new business that's looking to come to town. Open Table has filed a request for a special permit to operate at the former Aubuchon's hardware site. Their application is scheduled for February 9th planning board meeting, and they're looking at the Aubuchon space, and the special permit that they're looking at is essentially a variance on required parking spaces.
Would they have is there a plan to have their, just like their pantry there, or?
The full operation would be the pantry location and bringing the food service piece back to Maynard at that location.
Without a kitchen, or they'd have to put that in there?
There's construction costs, they would upfit it. Yeah, they'd be doing a renovation project there.
You still talking sharing space with Boys and Girls Club maybe on some of their programs?
It's all dependent on what they get for a lease and then make an offer to the Boys and Girls Club.
We've had conversations at the Boys and Girls Club level, at the Council on Aging level. But yeah.
So
like
during
Andrew said,
times of non-use, having them go,
particularly for the Boys and Girls Club, there's been a strong desire from Wendy to have a teen center. And she's talked about this in the past. Originally, she was looking at space actually next to the movie theater upstairs there, and that didn't work out for whatever reason. And I know she's always kind of wanted, because she's outgrown her space there, and she'd like to have something more for teen focus. And being in the downtown.
Sure, that's a good location, actually, yeah.
Be a good location for a teen center and some of the programs that she runs with them, so. Yeah, hopefully, it'd be nice, because, their need isn't a 7-day a week, operation, right? So there's a lot of downtime that operation would have, where if there's opportunity for other use to be co-located, that would be ideal. So, anything else, economic development? No. Terrence told me that Dunkin' Donuts was closed. But
Yeah, what's up with that? Does anybody have any update info on that?
Tedeschi's?
It's Tedeschi's.
Well, they gotta be renovating, aren't they? Are they renovating?
I heard a rumor today that the site was sold to 7-Eleven, then they're
bought the
not coming
site.
back.
Oh?
Yeah, so we gotta get to the bottom of that.
That was an economic development that we hadn't heard yet.
Oof. I
Okay.
saw them there this morning. I thought, when I went, this morning? Last night, they were doing, it must have been today, this morning. They had a bunch of stuff out there, and there was I thought they were doing something next door, because they had a couple.
Oh, you got excited about that?
No, I didn't get excited,
Oh, you
but I
saw it
thought, I
working,
just thought they were going next, I
construction?
thought, because all their stuff was leaning against the wall of the building while they were doing whatever they're doing, so it's
That could
closed.
be a 7-Eleven
That's not good.
uplift too.
Dunkin' Donuts is gonna pour you, better buy a coffee machine.
I have one.
Okay.
Nice to have a house every once in a while.
TA
Great
updates.
coffee in the mill.
Yeah,
As
that's good.
well as
over
on
there.
Main Street.
Local,
Some really
right,
good coffee.
Framingham, I think they get it from.
Hogan's.
Hogan's, yeah.
So, where's it?
Amory Maynard Cafe.
Milky coffee.
You gotta go in, you gotta go through the fence and go down in the
It's
bottom?
a little removed.
No, no, I'm just asking where it is.
Yeah,
So
you
it's
gotta
down,
go through the fence and right into the door.
Yeah.
It'd save you from going through the
So-
building
so it's open,
maze.
open to the public for coffee now?
Yeah, they're open,
8 to 2.
8 to 2, yeah.
All right.
They do serve good coffee.
To spread my coffee buying around, so.
Yeah, there you go. David mentioned the Veterans Memorial Park design is scheduled for Thursday, January 7th at the library, 7 PM. They've been several initiatives beginning, which this will be the first in the series of public workshops. CBA Landscaping Associates of Cambridge, as you know, has been working with staff to reach out to groups who utilize the park on a regular basis, or those who have a connection to the park, like the veterans, community band, et cetera. There's been several groups that have already had discussions and also plan to attend this workshop. The town has presented a last and final offer to both the fire and dispatcher unions. At this point, we've been awaiting union action. In fact, the dispatcher union representative,
He's now a police officer.
no, not employee representative, but they're part of the NEPBA. They have essentially a business agent. He has been unresponsive for the last month, not only on the town side, but on the union side. They haven't had any communication with him, so we don't really know what's going on there, but, at our point, we've presented a best and final offer, and we feel we've done the best we can and have presented a contract that, as long as both sides aren't happy with it, it's a good contract. Second phase of the record management system. The second phase of the record management system I've discussed, I presented on what we have done in the vault. And again, with King Information Systems, that's underway. They started on Monday. Be about 2 weeks they'll be here, you think? Or so. They're working currently down in the lower level, focused on the maps and plans, organizing, particularly a lot of the DPW maps and plans, the building commissioner, conservation agent has some of that, and we'll get that to a position similar to where the vault is, so that things are known. The plans are just, it's amazing what is down there, and you could never find it in a million years. So there's a lot of duplicate and a lot of that going on. So this will be the second phase of that big initiative, and I think the end result will be very positive, much like what we've seen on the other one. They also installed a new software update on the existing management system that they have that was free, but part of an upgrade, so, and have tweaked a few things there, so it's in good shape. And the only other thing I had was there's been 2 interested establishments that have come in, potentially kind of around the same time frame, that have filed applications for all alcohol license. One is Roasted Peppers, and the other is Maynard House of Pizza. Roasted Peppers has been an establishment that has been on the list for some time, have been on and off the list. As you know, the ownership has changed there. Back when Jim Morris was the owner of Roasted Peppers, he was very much interested in obtaining an all-alcohol license. When the ownership changed hands, we went back to them, as you know, because we've had available licenses since then. And they weren't really interested in pursuing that, but they now are interested in going forward with the all-alcohol. Maynard House of Pizza currently has no license at all. They don't have a beer and wine license, and the establishment operation of Roasted Peppers seems to make the most sense at this point in time. Perhaps if Roasted Peppers were to get the license, that would free up their beer and wine, and that might be more suited for what their plan is. I don't really know what Maynard Hustle Pizza's plan is, as far as what, I know they said they would be making some renovation improvements, but at the end of the day, that, you know, they wanted the all alcohol because that was what was available.
That's the one that's right here, next to
Yeah,
it.
next door, yeah. So what like I said, they come in, but the history and the fact that they're currently already a license holder makes sense to move forward with scheduling a hearing for, for the Roasted Peppers as the applicant for the, it probably will put us, maybe at the first meeting in February, Chris, or the second meeting, for that license. I also have been in contact with the representative at the Department of Revenue and said, what can we do to get this thing back on? He's agreed to sign and submit a letter and the application to renew the license, even though the requirement to renew by December 1, all the establishments have to do that. We've kind of beyond that, but he's agreed to, if the town's interested, what he'll do is fill out the application, we'll issue the license to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is very common practice. This is the way it normally happens. And, the Department of Revenue would be the applicant. And that, he would attach a letter with, because we're beyond the December 1 piece, and explaining why the lapse, et cetera, and he'd be willing to walk away from it without a auction, which would essentially, they would recoup, from other means. They have options. One would be suspending driver's licenses. There's statute that the Department of Revenue has provisions to be able to try to recoup beyond the auction piece. But since we're in a new calendar year, we're in 2016, he's willing to let it kind of flow back to the town, but it needs to be issued to an entity, and since Maury's no longer exists and he didn't renew it, the Commonwealth of Mass Department of Revenue will renew it and hold it, and then a new applicant would apply for a transfer of that specific license. My concern was that, we were going to lose it. That's what they were saying. They're saying, he didn't renew it, his taxes are still owed on it, and normally, it would be lost, but he's been pretty good to work with through the process, and I was able to convince him of that today, and so we sent him off the renewal application, and it looks like we might be able to save that license, hopefully, as long as the ABCC doesn't take too much issue with it being renewed late, and hopefully have an additional one, which would be good. So if that were the case, and Maynard House of Pizza would be next on the list for either a beer or wine, or if they really did want to pursue an all alcohol, then they would be next for a hearing and a proposal to the board.
So can you, who's been really good to work with, the guy from the Department of Revenue, or?
Yeah, the guy from the representative from the Department of Revenue.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about him or the owner of Maury's Tavern was suddenly being.
No,
Okay.
that's, sorry, I'd be very clear on that. That's the furthest
Okay.
from good to work with, to the point where the representative from the Department of Revenue has had a long history of the same struggles I have had with trying to track down the former owner and recoup the costs, et cetera. And he's essentially agreed to walk away from the amount of money that's owed and put it back on the books for the town. But they'll still continue to go through their other channels to try to recoup the money that's owed to the DOR. But he's been excellent to work with. The prior owner, not so much. The last direction he gave him was to get in touch with Becky so that he didn't lose the license, get in touch with Becky, renew the application, and pay the fee. And he's never contacted the town, which, was suspected. But, so he's done from it. But, I think that's a good solution versus if nothing happens, it's gone at this point. Because it's not renewed and, it was seized by them, essentially, so. And then, hopefully with, with the Senate Eldridge's move on the Senate will move forward the other additional ones, and we'll be in good shape. Questions?
That's it?
That's it. That's all I have.
All right, the chair report. Just we don't need to meet early before the town meeting. There's no need for us to go in, is there?
I don't think, yeah, I don't
We
think
have,
there's
I know we did
anything.
last spring session, but not, we don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, if you think, you know,
Do it just in case.
we could do, I could post one for 6:30
Yeah, just in case.
on Thursday or
case
Friday.
anything comes
Yeah,
up.
well, Monday's town meeting, so yeah, we can do one Thursday morning, just as a placeholder if we don't need it.
We don't need
Yeah,
it. All right,
yeah, I'll ask Becky to do that.
so we should be there for 6:30 then.
I was planning for 6:30, yeah.
Okay. The other thing, I don't know if anyone else had read the letter that Jack McKeon had sent in, the Community Development Implementation Committee, which goes back to 2004. I don't even know what it is. So basically, the last paragraph is a suggestion that we consider appointing a short-term housing production plan implementation committee with the goal of using the plan and kind of following the guidelines set up by the MAPC. I don't know how anybody else feels about needing a committee. I don't think we'll act on it tonight anyways, but just something to think about. He spent some time writing the letter. The letter behind it, I've never seen before. It looks, since it was responded by July 14th, 2005, it's an 11-year-old document, and I don't even know that it's relevant, so.
I think that was, yeah, it was a
guess-
template
I
if
guess
we were
what
to
I'm-
seek.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking to see, kind of throw it out there and maybe we'll re-engage the discussion on the 19th as to what the board thinks about a committee to help get on board with the HPP. I want to talk to Bill Nemza before we do it, just to hear what his take on it is, just because, it's part of a planning thing as well. So, I don't know, just.
First thought I had about that after I
Throwing
read
it out
Jack's
there.
email was, we're struggling with filling board vacancies right now on committees, right? And not that I disagree that
Well, is
that
he
committee wouldn't be
proposing-
effective, right? But
Was he proposing that this group would then kind of evolve into the Affordable Housing Trust?
Yeah, he's affording, at the end of his term, the HPPIC, which would be the HPP Implementation Committee, would then springboard to foster the management board for the Affordable Housing Trust. So,
My sense is, and I applaud Jack for his initiative, and my sense is that he doesn't want it to die on the vine.
Yeah.
And this is the way to encourage the fact, and to Terrence's point, the people that he suggests being on this committee are folks that are already engaged on various committees already, so it'd just be piling on to the people
Yeah,
that are already
Well,
committed to the
I
town
mean,
as it
it's,
is,
you know,
not
it-
looking for, there might be one or two ad hocs.
yeah, it's suggesting one of us,
Yeah.
a planning board, a council on aging, someone from the housing authority, which I think there's only two.
He
of
might,
them, right?
he might be looking at the legislation for, or the statute for the Affordable Housing Trust, which prescribes the members that should be on there, one of which is voting members, either the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator. And that might be where he's pulling some of those people from, I don't know. And it also talks about the housing authority.
I think it's something that we need to get with Bill on and talk about, because I think it's a little more involved than taking 7 or 8 people and throw them in a room and giving them a copy of the plan.
I think that's wise. Bill is working on a grant application through MAPC for another DLTA grant that will do a lot of those things, including help us build that structure. And so, taking the measure of what else is going on, along with Jack's suggestions, we could probably have a better conversation about it a few weeks from now.
Okay, sounds good to me. That's all I have. Board member reports. Jason?
Kevin, is it possible in the next couple of weeks or next meeting or two to get an update from Bill on BEEP?
Yeah,
See what the status of
yeah.
the request. Question, I saw it the other day, the Murphy Snyder building went from having sort of a nondescript black piece of plywood in the broken window to now being just boarded up.
Yeah, we talked about it at
Yeah,
the
we
last,
talked about that.
Okay, do you guys,
at the last
3
meeting.
weeks
It's not just
ago.
boarded up, Jason, it's got brand-new plywood that's boarded
oh,
up.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Went
That's
from
all.
one window.
The side windows are now plywood
No,
too,
to
but
8. Do you have any more?
I don't know if they're,
So I think at this point, it's non-compliant. The step that's laid out in the bylaw is for the Board of Selectmen to call the property owner in for a meeting before the board. And that's the way the process, when there defaults on it, it plays out in the charter.
so we doing that?
We can notice them and have them here. I don't know if there's a period of time, but
I think it does give us a specified, it might be a 14-day notice. And, you know, we drag them in before the board and go that direction.
well, we'll ask them to arrive.
Yeah.
Not sure about the dragging part, but
Okay.
either the next meeting or the one subsequent to that,
Whatever
If,
whatever the timing allows.
depending on the timing.
Anything else,
We have a
Jason?
lot of commitments already for the 19th. with,
Yeah.
Just as a quick,
it's looked that way for 10 years. I don't know that it's going to be a big deal if it pushes back to like the first March meeting.
yeah.
So,
No, I'm just, yeah.
Probably be the first February meeting.
We got, the few January meeting, I have Stan Tech coming in that's going to be presenting their findings on the Hayes investigation. They're going to be presenting water sewer regulation recommendations as well as fee recommendations. Not rates, but fees.
yeah, the fees.
What was the first one? Hayes investigation?
Hayes Street.
Hayes neighborhood.
The drainage on Hayes
Got
Street.
it.
Is that available? Does Chris have that, copy of that on hand?
Yes,
Okay.
he does. I can give it to you.
I think I have 2 copies of it in my office, Jason, if you want to
So
stop by.
There's a short memo, there's a
Yeah.
memo to it, but I also have 2 very large detailed plans that show, you know, they're making some short-term recommendations and then some longer solutions, which are real money conversation. And,
Of course they are.
you know, part of which they want to make they've already made some improvements when they've cambered the line. They've already cleaned a lot of those blockages, and there's some more that they want to do. And then they want to kind of wait and see what happens in the spring. Like if there's been any impact, hopefully positive impact that's helped. But they're adamant that that area has been wet forever, that the culvert, turning that into a culvert had absolutely nothing to do with it. And the fact that the groundwater is like a shovel deep and it's down gradient of a massive wetland. And it takes all of the storm drain, all of the street runoff, catch basins feed into the back of that same line. So you add all those together, I don't know, I mean, it's been a few that have lived there forever, but they can't imagine that it was ever not a water issue there.
To that, has anyone ever taken up the town on the offer to tie in sump pumps to storm
No.
drains? Okay.
That was the other piece.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of one of those things that they've sort of just finished up doing. They presented me some of their findings. What they hadn't finished doing was cammering the rest of the line. Beyond, I've asked them to finish that, and that way we have a full analysis and we can make some decisions from that point.
Can we make sure that we notify the residents of the area that Stantec will be here doing that presentation? They were here, interested in the
Yeah.
prior.
Well, we've sent them 2 letters since that meeting in the spring, giving them updates of what we were doing with it. There was a grant that we were considering applying for and so on.
We're still we're still on the same contact list with
Yeah,
all those
we'll
folks.
Yeah,
absolutely
we'll-
get that out to them immediately.
That's one piece of it, and then we asked Stantec, who's also our consultant that's working on the I&I stuff,
Yeah.
to present a quick overview on the I&I findings, because they just finished the year 2 findings. It's a 5-year I&I piece. So they've just finished year 2, and in the spring we'll be starting year 3. And also, we had him review our current water and sewer regulations to make some recommendations there. And then kind of look at a list of, the fees, and we have some recommendations for that. So that'll be a few topics with the same group, but will certainly be time-consuming to some degree.
Only if I talk.
Yeah.
So I'll keep my mouth shut. Real quick, there was is there an update on this? There was one particular business in town that had been behind on, I think, all license payments for 16 and potentially 15.
Yeah,
Has that been resolved, or at least contact been made?
as of 5 o'clock this evening, yes.
Okay.
They've paid all the 16, and they're due in tomorrow for the 15 items. But yes.
Okay. And just real quick, I just want to say thank you and good job on the review of the insurance, having the separate consultant come in, evaluate the insurance,
Oh, yeah,
the work
thanks.
we've done with Maya. I think, if anything, it's always good to verify, and it was, I think, prudent and actually very nice to be able to show that the administration over the past, how many years has been doing a
Okay.
good job working with Maya, and it's benefiting us.
Yeah,
Especially
it is.
finding out that,
We
we could have been
We had some
hammered.
good perceptions and thought, but it was nice to hear, that somebody completely independent who actually would have favored the results the other way, because it would have triggered possible more work for the individual, clearly said that, you guys have been in good shape, and really laid out the facts of the matter are pretty consistent with what they've been telling us, so that was good to hear. But thank you.
That's that. Thanks, Chris.
Tim?
Nope, ain't nothing.
Mr. Gavin?
Yeah, a couple quick things. This, in Dropbox, there's some private personal information about
I'll take that out.
Russell's, make sure that gets
Amy,
taken
yeah,
down, yeah.
yeah.
One of these things gets lost, somebody goes in,
Yep.
whatever.
We'll delete that out, because we have the original stuff. That was just reference for the board.
Yeah, I
only.
know.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we get rid of it. And then lastly, just to everybody, not only here, but that watches as well, Happy New Year. And this is the beginning of what could be a very, very exciting year for our community, and, energize and rebirth and everything else. And people should take note of the good things that are happening in our community versus some of the, the negativity that sometimes is pervasive. And the fact that we have an opportunity again to move our community forward, people should take note of that and be proud of ourselves. That is it.
Agreed.
Two quick points. Parking tags. Andrew, I actually saw some yellow tags hanging from some, today out on Railroad Street, and I saw a couple out in River Street, but do we have a time frame from the chief on what the enforcement that's gonna be?
Yeah, so the chief is, they're holding off on the strict enforcement. They've been putting out warnings, including applications with the warnings to say, here's how you resolve this issue, until the signs get put up. We've put the signs up on River Street. We've not yet put them up on Florida Court or Railroad Street, and there's a specific reason for that. It'll probably be resolved this week, and they'll go up. There is an issue with a owner on Railroad Street who claims that they have a right-of-way and access to the parking. They've yet to provide me with the details, and that's a holdup.
What's that?
It's the single-family house that's on Railroad.
Is this what we discussed last time we all met, the subcommittee?
Well, when you and I met, and Tim, we talked about an alleged lawsuit that we had resolved, that the town had won. It was dismissed in the town's favor. This is something separate.
Oh, okay.
And the person has sent me some information, but it does not delineate to me that they have a right-of-way. The information shows that they have a right-of-way on Railroad Street, but it's only basically to the middle of the road, and the parking is on the other side.
Gotcha.
So it may be a misinterpretation of what they think they have, and I have to meet with the person to resolve it.
Okay.
What we don't want to do is put up the signs, then have to take them down, or if we find out that we're that they actually do have permission to park there. I want to make sure that's all real clear before we go further.
Gotcha.
In the meantime, we've sold about 40 passes,
Excellent.
permits, rather.
We'll be funding all kinds of stuff with that. Last thing, Kevin, alcohol incidents. Since we're talking about putting out more liquor licenses to potential, changing up maybe one at Roasted Peppers and adding maybe a new one. So where do we have a report, whether from the police department or whatever, on any incidents that current license holders have? Where can we get a hold of that as the board, as a local licensing authority, to take a look at that and review that? And secondly, I happened to read the last served report for the state not too long ago, and there was Maynard establishments on there. So I'm wondering, who, if anybody, gets that information back to those to the businesses in town? Do they know they're actually on this list and that they're being accused of?
They do.
Okay.
They're notified, and the police chief handles that data. The police chief is over in our office daily, especially on Mondays, reporting whether or not there's been any incidents. So any active incidents, the chief, because they have, as a license holder, they have a responsibility to report incidents within 24 hours. And the chief, a lot of times there's an issue with, that gets reported to, essentially to the local licensing authority, which Becky would receive. But then oftentimes there's an incident that is a police report trigger. So he will provide that as well, and there hasn't been anything in a while, and make a determination whether it's something that's egregious that would require to be before the board as the local licensing authority for some disciplinary issue or something like that. But the police chief maintains the incidents that, and with, in conjunction with Becky. And he provides those updates, but there's nothing, active that, that there's been any incident. Occasionally we get them when we get the grant money. We do the underage buy stings. They'll pop up then, and most of the time those are brought in before the board. Or there's a DUI that is a last known in town, at an establishment in town. Those get called as well.
Gotcha.
So I guess if your question is, like, are you not aware of all kinds of things that's happening? I would say no. And if the board would be notified, and even if there's something that they don't necessarily have a hearing, we'll make we put it in there just as an advisory, so the board knows that there was something that happened there. But the chief didn't think it warranted a full hearing for.
But if
We
I
had one
wanted,
of those recently, Terrence, you might recall that there was a notice to the board saying that we weren't going to have a hearing on it and the reason was because the ownership was changing within like a week or so.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Exactly.
it was Mariah Liquors at the time, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah, Mariah.
Yeah, well aware of that situation. So I'd like to do a better job of staying up to date. If we are having these, if I have to go see Chief DuBois to get a list from him, if the list exists, that's fine. I'm just curious as to how we get that access.
Yeah. I think, Becky technically maintains the intake of as a license holder, and she manages that. But that she'd be the best one to give a list, but the chief is involved with every one of them.
Gotcha.
And like I said, most of the time, because it's a police report that triggered it's usually a fight, some kind of fight that happened outside of the establishment or started in the establishment and went out. And then that gets reported to Becky on the incident form, and then there's usually a police report that's tied into it, so,
Roger.
yeah.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, well, before we adjourn, just want to remind everybody in Maynard that might be listening or watching that Monday, January 11th at 7 p.m. at the Fowler Auditorium is a special town meeting, and there are 9 warrant articles to be voted on, and it would be nice to see the town come out and participate in the town meeting. Now, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Zach, we're done.
Thanks, Zach.